Okay, good evening, everybody. It being 6:13 p.m. on Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021, I'm calling to order this meeting of the Board of Selectmen, which is being held remotely. All members of the board are present on the call, as well as Town Manager and Assistant Town Manager Christy Williams and Kim Foster, and Sheila Dorr, our confidential administrative assistant, is here to capture the results and for the minutes and assist us administratively. As this is a remote meeting, I'll start with the governor's orders. So pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Westboro Board of Selectmen will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Westboro's website at town.westboro.ma.us. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch may do so in the following manner: via Westboro TV's online platforms, which includes youtube.com/WestboroTV and westborotv.org, or on Charter Channel 192 or Verizon Fios Channel 28. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time by technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westboro's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive recording of the proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Before we get into open forum, I believe someone was trying to get in and is having trouble. Christy, can you respond that we're now here? And oh, I just got a thumbs up. There's David, who's going to be in open forum. But before we go there, I'm going to share my screen, walk through the agenda for tonight's meeting. Okay, so we'll start this evening. As noted on the agenda, we convened at 5:30 for an executive session. We're returning from executive session. I'm sorry that it ran a little bit longer than the half hour planned, but we'll start with open forum. We have one resident speaking this evening. Followed up, we'll go through the Board of Selectmen for any upcoming events and activities. Following that, item 4 is a presentation, the site plan, and our chance to provide comments and questions. The site plan review for 4400 Computer Drive. Item 5 is the Town Manager's report. Item 6 are appointments. There are 4 on the agenda. We'll be addressing 2 this evening. John McCann to the Council on Aging, and Daniel Schur is the Board of Selectmen's delegate to the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission. Item 7 is a discussion and vote to continue our process of transitioning the country club into the rec department. So we will discuss and vote dissolution of the country club operating committee, amending the Recreation Commission membership, and appointing Katie Welch to the Recreation Commission as a non-voting member. Followed by number 8, discussion and vote to amend the Bay State Green Rules and Regulations. Number 9, discussion and vote approve Insurance Advisory Committee Memorandum of Agreement. Number 10 is discussion vote approve and execute bond anticipation notes. Number 11 is a presentation about the Mass Save Municipal Partnership Program that we are participating in. Number 12 is a discussion vote regarding the town's right of first refusal for 64 Otis Street. Number 13 is a discussion vote on the animal control poultry bylaw changes. Number 14, discussion and vote on the MBTA expansion update and support. Number 15 is a discussion vote on a letter of support for the Mass General Brigham project. Number 16, we have a discussion of the fiscal 22 budget and town meeting warrant update. Number 17 is a request to approve meeting minutes from our January 28th, 2021 meeting. And finally, number 18, hopefully we'll be on time at 8:25, issues and correspondence of the Selectmen. And so with that, I'll stop presenting. And I will welcome Mr. Silva just for the benefit of the audience. Open forum is a chance, an opportunity for the Board of Selectmen to hear feedback and input from residents. It is not a mechanism for discussion, debate, so we will listen and consider what's shared with respect to our future actions. So, Mr. Silva, welcome, and please start by saying your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name's David Silva. I live at 54 Warren Street here in town. I wanted to speak this evening about the poultry law and in support of it. I, for the last about year, have been living with poultry in my residential neighborhood, and I can say that it affects the neighbors that live around the poultry. Free-range chickens are not something that you would expect to see when you're living in a residential neighborhood. And when they're introduced, it changes the characteristics of the neighborhood. When you go from a situation where you have domestic pets like dogs and cats, and then obviously the wildlife that lives in the area, to a situation where chickens are roaming the neighborhood. From my personal experience, chickens are not cognizant nor did they care about boundaries on property. They don't care about using the bathroom in the associated or whatever the correct area might be. And they're also not considerate of the noise that they create for neighbors of properties that house chickens. I think it's important as we balance the thought here between the rights of a property owner, the rights to own agriculture in a residential area, as well as the effect it has on everyone around them. I certainly didn't buy my home on Warren Street hoping to live in an agricultural setting. It's zoned residential. Take that for what you may. I consider Westboro a Boston suburb, and a tier 1 town at that. And if you want to partake in an agricultural lifestyle, I think there's more suitable ways to do so by placing yourself in an agricultural setting rather than forcing it on your neighbors around you in a residential setting. I won't get into many other things, but something to think about is that when a property owns, chickens and has them walking around their property, in my situation, that affects 9 to 11 other properties that are abutting or have line of sight. And it's just, if there's a way to balance the desires of an individual to house chickens for either agricultural or pet needs, then there should also be a confined zone in which they live in so as to not interrupt the residential neighborhood. We have certain laws that outline how you need to register and pay for a residential pet and a dog. And I think we can take a lesson from that and say either chickens are agricultural in their nature or they're pets. And if they're pets or agricultural, they need to be regulated and they may not belong in a residential setting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your input. Okay, so we appreciate you coming out and joining us and sharing your views. We will be discussing this item later in the evening on a future agenda item. So if you'd like to exit the live session and watch on TV, you can see our deliberations and our discussion and vote at that time. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is upcoming events and activities. And so I will start with Shelby.
Yep, I'll just remind folks that this week is Kindness Week, hosted by Westboro Connects and several community partners and sponsors. Folks can find out more about that event at westboroconnects.org or on the Facebook page specific for this event, which is Westboro Connects Kindness Week. Thank you.
Okay, Sean?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the Senior Center is celebrating opening day on April 1st. You can register to pick up lunch there at 12:30. Also, I don't know if these are typically things we mention here. You need to license your dog by March 31st. Also, please, if you have not, I recommend you sign up for Code Red, and it is on the town webpage. All right, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Patrick?
Yeah, I just have one item. The Westboro Lions Club is having their Rubber Duck Derby Saturday, April 10th. It's to raise scholarships for the high schoolers. It's a great cause. I highly recommend folks check it out on the Lions Club website.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ian?
Yep, just two quick things. One is to remind folks that the Westboro Golf Club is open. It opened last Saturday, so for golfers out there, again, remember it's a public course, but also memberships are available, and looking for people to join. The second thing is just the annual. This would be the second year of the modified annual green cleanup day, sponsored by the Westboro Land Trust, is coming up. There is information, the website for people to sign up, get bags delivered, and you will pick a spot. You'll be assigned to a spot where you can do it socially distance and clean up our town. As part of that, in early April, you'll have a time frame to do it, and then once you're completed, leave your bags, and the town's DPW comes by and picks those up. So just encourage folks to participate. It's always a great way for us to, after the winter season, really make Westboro shine. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I've got one item, which is this Saturday morning at the high school. The Girl Scout troop is again having a textile recycling day, and Zero Waste Westboro, I believe, will be there as well to collect plastic food containers and other plastic bags and thin plastic that you normally can't recycle. They're doing that as part of the Trex program, where those materials will be repurposed as, I guess, decking and fascia boards and other building products. So a good way to recycle. Did I get that right, Shelby? Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. So moving on with the agenda, item number 4 is a presentation, the site plan for 4400 Computer Drive. We've got a number of folks joining us this evening remotely to participate in this. And so I will ask Mr. Robert Buckley to introduce himself and introduce the other folks who are with him here this evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Robert Buckley, Riemann Bronstein. If I can indulge the chair, that maybe I'll introduce the members as I need them to speak rather than taking time. Many of them will be observing. But first, I'd like to introduce John Perry from Langen, our site civil engineer. If he could put up the current existing conditions plan, if that would allow him to share that screen.
Sure, he can. Hover over the bottom, the white band comes up, and just click on Present Now.
Yep, I think I have it.
Okay, great.
Thank you. As you can see from the plan, the current site is in the middle. It's off of Route 9 and Computer Drive. It currently, the site is about 93 acres. The building was built at approximately 1978. And for a number of years, it has been less than fully occupied. And if you look to the rear of the site, you'll see there's a trucking operation there. I think it is safe to say that the building has seen its day in terms of being responsive to the marketplace. And I think it's time to take a hard look at this and to reposition it to respond to the current market. The the current zoning for the site would allow a building of 60 feet in height. And on the site today, there are approximately 2,800 standard and accessible parking spaces. What we are proposing for the property that is in the IB zoning district and ID industrial overlay, and a small portion in a residential zoning district. John, I mean, if we could put up the proposed site plan.
Proposed site plan? Yep. You see it?
Not yet.
You still see the existing conditions?
Existing conditions, yep.
Yeah, we're not seeing the slide view, we're seeing the standard
There we
view.
go.
There you go.
There we go. There we
How's
go.
that?
Yeah, the applicant proposes to replace the existing building with a state-of-the-art 2,221 square foot, 45-foot height e-commerce logistics building that will incorporate many elements fostering sustainability consistent with the user's long-term carbon neutral goals. So it's a unique opportunity to reposition the property, taking advantage of what the market is demanding, and also to redesign the physical property to incorporate many of the aspirations of many communities today. And you will notice that the trucking operation would be eliminated as part of the repositioning of the property. The uses being proposed are permitted under the zoning bylaw as of right, subject to the site plan review process, which we have filed with the planning board. The one interesting aspect of this is that as a result of the repositioning of the property, roughly half of the parking spaces on site today would be eliminated. There is no work being proposed any closer to residential structures. The height of the building, as I indicated earlier, would be lowered. And the access and the impact on the roadway systems would only be on the state roads that are adjacent to the site. All the roads, Computer Drive, et cetera, are state jurisdictional roads and not town roads. The operations of the building would be coordinated off-peak, so there'd be a minimal impact with respect to peak traffic flows in and around the area, and that to me is a major benefit for the operations. And another important aspect is all parking would be contained on site. There would be no shuttling of vehicles from storage sites or off satellite lots to the site. Everything would be self-contained within the perimeter of the lot. The site's been designed to minimize any impacts on abutting properties, more so than exists today. And I think that, again, I will circle back to the comment I made in the beginning. The current building is unresponsive to the marketplace, and it's time to turn this into a productive asset for the municipality as well as the area. And that productivity translates into a higher tax rate or tax yield for the municipality, as well as some other benefits that would be, some of them would be a one-time benefit in terms of permit fees, construction fees, but also because of the way these are structured, there'd be recurring revenue in terms of excise taxes attributable to the vehicles that would be registered and attributable to the town. And it is important to note that the applicant is not looking for any financial assistance with respect to a TIF or other impact-oriented development benefit. So this would be self-sufficient, tax-producing, and job-enhancing for the community. That is a overview of the site. I just want to end by saying that, you know, change is change, and the market in the last year in particular has changed dramatically. And it's time to reposition some of these properties, and a lot of time and effort has been put into this over the last year to look at this and try to figure out what would work. And this is an opportunity, I believe, and I believe the development team also, for the community to be at the forefront of the emerging technologies and trends. This would be, as I also said, state of the art. So with that, we don't want to clog your otherwise very busy agenda. We'd welcome any questions that you may have. And as I indicated, we're before the planning board with the site plan approval request, so any comments could be forwarded to them also for response.
Okay, thank you very much. I will open it up to board members who have questions. Sean.
No, I think I'm good right now. I look at this and it feels like you've picked the ideal location in town for this type of property. So I think I'm agreeable to it from that perspective. And I'll watch the planning board meeting when you guys present to hear sort of their questions and things, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Patrick.
I'll just say, having worked in the current building on a number of occasions, both when I was in high school as well as later in my career, I completely understand that building is likely very tired. So it's great to see that this opportunity is coming before the town. So I appreciate that. And I would concur with Sean that it's a good space for that. You had mentioned that the roads are state maintained. Does that mean that, for example, plowing efforts, things like that, I mean, this might be a better question for the board. I'm just curious how those roads are maintained. Are they maintained by the state or are they maintained by the town for Research Drive and Computer Drive, that area?
They are state jurisdictional roads, so I assume the state maintains them and is responsible for the repair. In some communities, the town, out of convenience, will plow, but in terms of repair and maintenance, that's the state obligation.
Thank you. That's all the questions I had. Thank you, Alan.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Ian.
Yeah, just a couple quick things. One, I like Patrick enjoyed working in that a number of years ago, in that building a number of years ago, and it was tired back then, and I'm sure it's more tired now, even with enhancements that were made to it. But I do think the space, the greenery, the elimination of a lot of the parking spots that are there will actually make it a more attractive and a better spot there. I guess the two questions I had, first was just where the entrance is off of Computer Drive. I'm assuming there's no changes proposed, or are there changes proposed to that, what I'll call the main entrance into the property?
There are no proposed changes. There would be changes relating to site circulation, but the access points off of Computer Drive would remain the same.
Right. And I think you answered my second question. I think if I read through the materials too, that there's an existing link, I think, to, is it 2400 or whatever, and it looks like,
yeah.
And that will be maintained. Is that
that's
accurate?
Right? And that ties into the site circulation. That we will coordinate the site circulation to make it more efficient. So that it just leads to a better flow. So
perfect.
But I would be remiss if I didn't point out that we talked about the building being tied, but I also think that the infrastructure, as a result of this redevelopment, the stormwater management, everything will be brought up to state standards, which is a tremendous benefit because there are some jurisdictional wetlands in the area. So this is an opportunity to bring the entire property up to a higher level of performance, again, consistent with the long-term objectives of the applicant and the user.
No, that's a great point, and we truly appreciate that. I know our conservation, DPW do. And the last thing, and I think I already heard it and know it, but just so public knows as well that's listening, the intent here is the current building that there will be completely demolished, and this will be all new construction of the new facility. Is that accurate as well?
That's correct. And again, that translates into fees for the municipality with respect to building permit fees.
Perfect. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, no further questions for me.
Okay, thank you, Ian. So a couple of just quick questions and points. One, I noted in the information, the detailed information that we received, that the current truck operation has significantly more semi-trailer trips than is expected for the e-commerce site.
Yeah. Today, there are 260 daily trips. We project those to be reduced to about 32.
Okay, so that's significant. And I also noticed that there's a fairly significant infrastructure for electric vehicles.
Yeah, that pertains to the long-term objectives of the user, which is to approach a carbon neutral environment sustainability. The future of the industry would be the electric distribution vehicles, and so the grid or the servicing of that would be installed as part of the project.
Okay, great. And are there, I didn't notice in the plans, but is there discussion or the potential for solar panels or other renewable energy on the site?
There have been discussions. The building itself would probably support, from a structural standpoint, the existing building would be unable to support solar panels, but those are being factored in, and I think we'll be in a position at the planning board to discuss that in greater detail. You know, you can look at it in terms of on-site, be they carport type of operations or on the roof, but those are the things that we will be focused on. But structurally, the building could support it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Those are all the questions I had. Are there any follow-up questions from members of the board? Shelby?
Yes, I have a couple questions. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Buckley, for presenting this and for the extensive packet we received in our portfolios. Most of the questions have been asked, so I won't repeat them, but I do want to provide emphasis on my pleasure in hearing about the EV stations for cars and the users' commitment to carbon neutrality and the potential for solar panels. And at least there's an open discussion there in line with that. So thank you for calling attention to that. I also want to make the public aware that there's a commitment to, and keep me honest, Mr. Buckley, but retain as many trees, mature trees as possible. There's, as you've already mentioned, extensive improvements for the stormwater management. From a lighting perspective, there's appreciation for any abutters with light shielding, appropriate positioning, and so on and so forth. So I appreciate the attention to detail provided.
That is correct. We're very, I hate to use the word, but I use it a lot on with this applicant. There's a lot of commitment, and you'll see that the landscaping plan is fairly robust, and the lighting is one of the things we focused on early, and that will be shielded, and there'll be no migration into abutting properties.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, and thank you, Shelby. I think you may be the only person on the board who hasn't worked in this building. So this is where I started my career, graduating college back in 1987, when this was Data General, and I was in a cubicle in E132.
I got you beat, Alan. I worked in this in high school. There was a CVS located in the middle of that building, and I worked at the CVS.
Okay, awesome. Okay, any further questions? Okay, so at this point, should the board have any additional questions, they can be sent to the planning board for consideration as part of the ongoing. Shelby, yes.
Yeah, I would just hope that our comments here around the areas of focus and importance are sent as even by way of minutes to the planning board, particularly around, okay.
Yes, our feedback in the form of minutes will be sent to the planning board as well. And Ian, did you have something?
No, I was going to say that basically the same thing. And I appreciate Shelby bringing up. I think the big piece is where this does abut some residential properties currently, but with the design and the buffering, that it is not encroaching on that is by physical or by spillover of light, whatever, is very important. Already been addressed. No reason to further address it with the planning board, but appreciate the applicants for taking that into consideration.
And we have had an outreach to some of the abutting property owners to discuss those issues. So,
great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christy.
Yeah, so typically, so your minutes actually won't be approved prior to the planning board hearing this. And so typically the board would make comments that they specifically want to go to the planning board, and we would send that in the form of a memo. So if you want, we can go through what the board said and then just pull out what we think you're asking us to send. But typically you would state what the comments you want to go directly to the planning board.
Yeah, so I would emphasize the hope that solar readiness is an opportunity, rooftop or carport or what have you. I know that's certainly not a requirement, but any efforts that can be made toward carbon neutrality is great. Love the EV stations that are already being proposed, and as well as all the improvements. So I think the solar was the only piece that was not specifically stated in the packet we received that I would like as comments.
Okay. Any other specific comments beyond our general discussion? Nope. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time and consideration, and please, everyone, stay healthy.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, so next on the agenda is item 5, Town Manager's Report. So I will hand it over to Christy.
As an update to the Regal Cinema, at this time, the town has filed a complaint in the land court to foreclose upon the tax lien on record. We've talked about this before. Procedurally, the case has progressed to the point of notice being sent to anyone who has been deemed to be potentially hold interest in the property. Most of the parties have been noticed by the land court successfully, and there's been publication in this case as another form of notice. There are 3 more parties that require notice before we can move to the next procedural step in the case. At this point, no one has entered the court upon receiving notice. If that remains the case after all parties are noticed, then we can ask the court to review the file for entry of final judgment. If anyone answers the court, hearings will take place before motion for judgment can potentially enter. So that's an update for Regal. The vaccine clinic, the towns of Ashland, Boylston, Holliston, Hopkinton, Northborough, Southborough, and Westboro have been approved to host a regional vaccine clinic. The anticipated location of that clinic is a DoubleTree Hotel. So the towns are currently working on hiring a coordinator and working out the logistics. Any costs associated with the vaccine clinic is 100% reimbursable through FEMA. The state has indicated that the earliest we will receive vaccine is April 5th. We do not know how many doses we will receive, so we continue to encourage residents to not wait for the local clinic to obtain the vaccine and to go wherever and whenever possible if they are able to obtain another appointment. Anyone who's having trouble making an appointment online, please use the state's 211 number. We've received comments from residents who have had success in working through that phone number. And then anyone who's aware of a homebound individual that's in need of vaccine should contact the COVID information line at 508-871-5111. Homebound individuals, the town is still able to vaccinate, and so we are working toward that. In terms of reopening the town buildings, as of March 22nd, the state has moved into step 1 of phase 4. Therefore, we're continuing to plan for bringing staff back at 100% and opening the public for normal office hours. We continue at the board's direction to watch the guidance from the state. As you remember, over the summer, during a joint meeting of the Board of Health and Board of Selectmen, we did talk about following the state guidance going forward. So that was the sort of directive given. For department head updates, the Finance Department on February 24th, the financial team took part in a pre-borrowing rating call with Standard & Poor's, and on March 5th, S&P affirmed the town's short-term rating of S&P +1, and the long-term rating of AAA stable. On March 16th, the town went out to bid for $53 million in general obligation anticipation bond notes. The results of the bid were a net interest cost of 0.138% for a 1-year borrow. Also, real estate exemption applications are due by April 1st, and additional information can be received by contacting the assessor's office. The Recreation Department's been planning for much more of a typical summer season than last year, so it's anticipated that the Rec Department will offer many of our regular programming. The department planning includes hiring a variety of seasonal staff, counselors, golf attendants, lifeguards, and anyone interested in that can visit the Westboro Recreation website. The town's office is currently working on the town census data and dog licensing, and then daily issuance of birth, death certificates. As a reminder to all residents, annual dog licenses started in January, and any resident with a dog over 6 months of age must license their dogs yearly. So late fees start April 1st. Youth and Family Services in February and March, Youth and Family Services saw a sharp increase in requests for service. They've opened 7 new clients for resources and referrals and 6 new clients for clinical services. The Youth and Family Services directors began activities under the grant received by the Metro Health Foundation to address emotional resiliency in the community during the COVID-19 pandemic. They're working closely with Westboro Connects. And then in collaboration with the Westboro Public School Director of Wellness, Youth and Family Services published the first Community Wellness Guide of 2021. The theme is Pursuit of Racial Justice, and there's a link included in the Town Manager report for those who want to take a look at that. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving forward, item number 6, we have appointments. So, Christy, if you'd like to introduce.
Sure. So we have an appointment to the Affordable Housing Trust of Zafar Siddiqui. Oh.
Nope, he's withdrawn as he has taken an appointment on the Advisory Finance Committee.
Oh, okay. I didn't get that.
So it's John McCann to the Council on Aging and Daniel Schur as the delegate to the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission.
Well, and that is my report for that agenda item.
Okay.
So just to related to the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, we have the Board of Selectmen has 2 appointments to that commission. One is a delegate and the other is an alternate. Syed Hashmi had served as the delegate and has since stepped down. And so Daniel Schur, who had been appointed as the alternate, has asked to be appointed now as the delegate. And so there would be a vacancy. If you were to appoint him, there would be a vacancy in the alternate position. We've reached out to CMRPC to just get confirmation that both of those positions must be town residents, but do not have to be members of the board. So.
Okay. So why don't we start with the Council on Aging? I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to appoint John McCann to the Council on Aging for a term to expire June 30, 2022.
I'll second that. Selectman Johnson.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Patrick.
Welch, yes.
Sean?
Keough, yes.
Ian?
Johnson, yes.
And Shelby?
Marshall, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So Mr. McCann is appointed to the Council on Aging by a vote of 5-0, 5 being present. If I can entertain a motion to appoint Daniel Schur to delegate to CMRPC.
I'll make that motion. This is Shelby to appoint Daniel Schur as the delegate to the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission for a term to expire June 30, 2021. I guess, does the motion need to state that he is, I guess by delegate, he's not the alternate, right?
Correct.
Okay.
The delegate.
Okay. And the motion is correct as read.
I'll second that. Selectman Johnson.
Okay, great. And a roll call vote again. Sean?
Alan, if I may,
Yes.
I just want to let the board know I had a lovely conversation with Mr. Schur just to understand his interests and talk to him about certainly some of the observations I've had in the past about our involvement with CMRCP and the importance of communication and liaisoning back to the board. So being that he's not a board member, I think we're getting some feedback. We could mute. Anyway, he is more than happy to send a summary and work with to this board the updates and interface, connect with the planning board representative. So we had a great conversation, very supportive of this appointee.
Okay, great. Thank you for taking that initiative and reporting back. Any further discussion or questions? I forgot to ask that. I apologize. Okay, then a roll call vote. Sean.
Keough, yes.
Patrick.
Welch, yes.
Ian.
Johnson, yes.
Shelby.
And Marshall, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So the appointment proceeds by a vote of 5-0-0, 5 being present. Next on our agenda is a discussion vote on the dissolution of the Country Club Operating Committee, amending the Recreation Commission membership and appointing Katie Welch to the Recreation Commission as a non-voting member. And I believe our Recreation Director is here with us, so I will hand the floor to her to introduce. Or Christy, you want to start?
Yeah, and
Okay,
then Jen can definitely jump in. As the board is aware, we're making the transition of management of the country club from the country club operating committee and a contracted position to the recreation department. The country club operating committee was created by a vote of town meeting in 1980. And so we had reached out to town council asking what the process would be for dissolving that committee and making it so that the recreation director or the recreation department would be able to expend funds that go into that enterprise account. And so she had advised that the board would be able to dissolve the committee. There are no bylaws set up under the country club operating committee. And so you were able to do that without a town meeting vote. And so now that we have made the transition and we've hired an employee, the country club operating committee held their last meeting on March 9th, I believe. And so they're fully aware, very, very supportive, I think, of this model. And so, and Ian can speak to that because he's also serves as your liaison to that committee. And in reaching out to see if there was any interest for any of them to serve on the recreation committee, Katie Welch, who's also on the call, who's the chair of the country club operating committee, did volunteer. And so we're recommending that she be appointed as a non-voting member to the Recreation Commission in order to help us with the transition and to keep, to be a part of that going forward. And so that's why you have 3 votes in your packet. One is to dissolve the Country Club Operating Committee. One is to amend the Recreation Commission membership to include an additional non-voting member, and then to appoint Katie Welch as that non-voting member.
Okay, thank you. Jen, do you have anything to add?
No, that was great, Christy. Thank you. I just wanted to extend just a thank you to the Country Club Operating Committee. It is a lot of hard work to run a golf course, and they're a volunteer board like all of the boards are, but they really were in charge of all of the operations there, pretty much, like budgeting, capital planning, and staying on top of current golf trends. One of their bigger accomplishments, and there are many, but they switched to an online tee sheet. So all of that type of planning and stuff really came from a dedicated group of members, volunteers. So past boards, this current board, just want to say thank you. And it's all of your hard work is very, very much appreciated. And we're happy to have Katie join the Rec Commission as well.
Excellent. And Ian, you've been our liaison and been involved in this process.
I have been. I echo what Jen said. Just an impressive group of volunteers. I was happy to be the liaison and listen in and offer a few comments, but also to be clear, as Christy said, that this has been discussed with that committee. They knew what was happening, and basically the vote we're taking tonight. They're fully aware of the process and the transition to the Rec Commission. So,
Okay, great. Thank you. So I will entertain the first motion. Ian, would you like the honors?
Sure, I will take the honors. So I will move to dissolve the Country Club Operating Committee and further to authorize the Recreation Director to expend funds from the Country Club Enterprise account for the purpose of maintaining and managing the golf course.
I'll second that. Marshall?
Okay, any further discussion on this motion? Okay, then roll call vote. Patrick?
Welch, yes.
Ian?
Johnson, yes.
Marshall?
Marshall, yes.
Sean?
Keo, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So the motion passes 5-0-0, 5 being present. Ian, would you like to handle the second motion as well?
I'd be happy to. I'll move to amend the membership of the Recreation Commission to add one non-voting member.
Marshall seconds.
Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, go to roll call vote. Keo?
Keo, yes.
Welch?
Welch, yes.
Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
Marshall?
Marshall, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So the motion passes on a vote 5-0-0, 5 being present. And the final motion.
Yeah, I'll move to appoint Katie Welch as a non-voting member of the Recreation Commission with a term to expire on June 30th, 2023.
Marshall will second that motion.
Okay.
Got you locked in, Katie.
What was that, Ian?
I said we've got her locked in now to 2023.
Okay. Any discussion on the third motion? So seeing none, roll call vote. Keo?
Keo, yes.
Welch?
Welch, yes.
Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
Marshall?
Marshall, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. It passes 5-0-0, 5 being present. Katie, welcome back in a different role and capacity on the continuation of with your role on the Recreation Commission and active involvement in the golf club. Thank you very much for your commitment to the town and your continued willingness and ability to volunteer. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you. I'm glad to be aboard. And I just would like to add one thing. I just want to thank the administration, Christy, Kim, and Jen for all the work that they did to help with this whole transition. I think, and especially Jen, if you knew a year ago what you know today, I'm not quite so sure her enthusiasm would have been as exuberant as what it has been. But, you know, really, you've done a great job in helping us through this all. And, you know, we're glad that you're working with Jack and leading us through the whole thing. So I'm glad to be on board with you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, keeping things moving forward, next on the agenda are Bay State green rules and regulations. Christy, you're on mute.
So I apologize. I didn't realize that your packets didn't show the change that we had made. And so I'll try to pull that up. But what I was proposing is that the Recreation Department, and Jen can speak to this because she's on the call, is looking for a location to do her preschool soccer clinic. And so I understand that the rules that we have really would require, the rules and regs for the basic common really would require a full review. But in order to allow for Jen to be able to do this, I'm asking that we update the rules and regulations to allow for programs that are sponsored by a department to have an associated cost. So right now there's a rule that says that that there can't be a fee charged. And so since Jen's soccer clinics do have a fee associated, we would ask that rule be amended to allow for this and for other programs that might be offered by any town department. So Jen, I don't know if you just want to speak to why you want to use the Bay State Common and what the availability is of field space.
Yep. So with spring, our fields get really busy with Westboro Youth Soccer. They're at capacity, and this field is ideal really for the little kids because they don't need a ton of space. They don't need, real goals. They just use small pop-up goals. The kids aren't wearing cleats or anything. They're not tearing up the grass. It's just a good smaller space. They really just need like a patch of grass. And unfortunately, we just don't have the space on our own fields to accommodate this program. So happy to answer a question, but that's pretty much the reason.
So the amendment is on section 2, letter L. It says no fee. The way it currently reads is no fee may be charged for entrance to any approved town common event. And so the amendment is to add the words unless the event is sponsored by a town department.
Okay, Patrick, you have a question?
Yeah, just curious, is there also a change needed for section 1K in regards to organized sporting events, competition, or matches may not be waived by the town manager? Does this require a board vote to allow a sporting event on the green?
It's a good question. I did look at that. I just didn't consider the clinic to be really a sporting event. If the board feels it is, then yes, we would want you to also amend that section as well, or at least allow for it in this case. But I really consider that to be more of some sort of an organized competition, and this is really just a clinic.
Okay.
Okay, Shelby?
A couple questions. What are the ages of this clinic?
Ages 3 to 5.
And how long will it run?
It's 6 weeks.
And when is that, Jen?
It starts the week after April vacation, April 27th, I believe.
Okay. So is there a guarantee that kids aren't going to wear cleats?
Yes, we can make it a guarantee. We will just say no cleats allowed. Earl would not be happy if I ruined his grass.
Yeah, it could be that it's one that has sprinklers. How many kids do you anticipate? What's the maximum for the clinic?
Yep. So the max number, so I'm just looking at it here, it'll be significantly less, I think, than normally, because they do run programs on our Haskell fields. For the little guys, the max is 18 per session, and they run 3 sessions, but I'm just looking at the numbers right now, and I bet that will only be 2 sessions. They start early in the morning. The first session's at 8:30, and they're done by 11:30.
And are the sessions scattered across the days of the week? Are they on the weekends?
Nope, just on Saturdays. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm lying to you. Yeah, Saturdays. Sorry, I was looking at
So Jen, I'm sure you know, but like tents and stakes can't be used on that because of the sprinkler system. So we'd have to be super careful there. What about parking? I would imagine that's at least 18 additional cars. Where are folks planning to park? I know we have ample downtown parking because we've already done that study. But what is the expectation there?
There are parking spaces right along the sidewalk there, kind of behind the Forbes building. Not behind, I'm so bad at describing locations. There's also parking across the street from the condos. If needed, I believe like that Panera, not even Panera, that Ski Bus and Ski Sport, there's parking over there.
Okay, so scattered throughout that area.
Yeah, typical of like if we were to run an event there or concert.
And I'm sorry, you said what time on Saturday mornings?
8:30 is their start time.
And what time would they end?
So the whole thing would be done by 11:30. So there's like 3 sessions right now scheduled. So 8:30 to 11:30.
I appreciate all the information. So I will say I'm empathetic to the need to provide some green space for these, for these activities. I'm hesitant that we would use this open space that is, generally sort of recognized as just like kind of come and hang out and kids that are using the playground, and that we're tying that up for 6 weeks post-pandemic. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. In a pandemic, when people are clearly going to be outside moving around, for 3 hours at a time. Not to mention that the grass there, unlike where the playground is actually pretty pristine. And I do realize these are a bunch of little guys, 3 to 5 year olds, so it's not like there's heavy turf movement or impact. What other spaces were considered?
Can I just want to jump in, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but so Jen has run a little program on this type of program over there in the past, and so we noted the conflict when it was applied for this year, and so in terms of just parking, that question, I just want to that's worked out prior. But Jen, what other turf or what other fields had you considered?
So the state hospital property up there, those are soccer fields. We had considered that. And Haskell is also sometimes in the summer, we use kind of the outfields of all of the spaces, but with Little League going on, that's not an option. So those were the 2 conversations we had in the office.
Do we consider the schools?
No, I didn't. I could.
So the request is for the amendment, which would be that any town-sponsored event that was use that facility could charge a fee, and that would be subject to all of the other rules and regulations. So I just want to clarify that going forward, if there's additional requests like Jen's, the intention wouldn't be to bring them before the board, but to just follow the rules and regulations.
Right. Well, no, must be my voice tonight. I think to Patrick's, I picked up on the same thing of 1K is to, I think it's up to interpretation as to whether or not it needs to be voted on by the board. And I think that we need to find balance in how we're using, open space. And so while I understand that may or may not be something we're voting on tonight, it seems like there are other options that are better for this purpose than what is being proposed. And so I'm not opposed to the amendment, but if it sort of is setting a precedent for this kind of conversation, I am concerned with it.
Okay, thank you, Shelby. So, Sean, anything before, or Ian?
Yeah, I guess you're right. We ought to think about, do a full review of these guidelines and consider what changes we want to make to these rules. I just, I don't know if we're better off if we would rather make an exception than actually changing the rules. I don't know what people's thoughts are on that and how we do that. Do we just allow an exception here today if people are agreeable to that, but then look to review the rules in total at a later meeting?
Ian?
Yeah, I guess my take would be, I agree with Sean that, and I think Christy had recommended it too, that we should put out regulation and look for any changes that might be applicable there. I think that doesn't, making this amendment tonight, when we look at it again, if we need to change or modify, we can still do that. So, I'm supportive of it. I understand Shelby's concerns there. I guess I look at it, I really look at this as public space, and it is pristine, but it's meant for public use and other things. So I guess I personally don't have issue. I love seeing it be used. I love seeing it with multi-generational. I think the little kids out there enjoying it is great. So I'm fine with the amendment tonight. I'm fine with the use. I know that's not our approval of what we're going on tonight, but I am fine with the amendment. I'm fine with also Christy and Sean's suggestion that we review the whole rules and regulations at a future meeting date.
Okay, thank you, Ian. So we'll note that at a future meeting, we'll review the full set of rules and regulations for the property. From this particular use is sort of triggering the discussion. I can't imagine, 18 kids at that age group using up the entire grass area. I know I remember when my kids played soccer, it's the goals are like pop-up tents, the kind you can never twist and get back into the circle.
Yes, exactly. I was going to note that as well, that this is not, they will not use the entire space. It's very small. And this is the only time of year. I'm sorry, Alan, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to confirm that you are correct. Yeah. That said, I'm also aware that the schools are looking to have as robust possible spring, fall, winter 2 and now spring sports, and have advised that some sports that would normally only be during the week may have games, meets, and practices on Saturdays to facilitate it. So I'm not sure about the availability of school fields. So it might be worth asking to see if there's an alternate location, but for this use, I'm comfortable with it happening here as well. I feel comfortable with the amendment, knowing that, it allows this to go forward if the space is needed, but also we'll be doing a full review at a future time. So any additional, Patrick?
Yeah, I would echo the thoughts of all of you. I would just mention, I think it's important that we do look at those other fields as much as possible. I mean, I'm not familiar with what the school's requirements or demands are on the fields. But historically, when you look at fields like down at the middle school, those are typically not overutilized at all. But in the context of this being a very small group of kids and under the kind of the guidelines that Shelby kind of indicated around no cleats, no spikes in the ground because of the sprinkler system, I think it's safe to allow a small group of individuals to go down there. I wouldn't want to approve, for example, the high school soccer team to go down there and practice, right? So I just want to be careful of that, right? But I too would also support the use based on kind of what's been mentioned tonight.
Okay,
so I'll make a motion.
Sure, thank you.
So I would move to approve the amendment to the Bay State Green rules and regulations as presented.
I'll second. Keough.
Okay. So Johnson moved, Keough second. Any further discussion? Hearing seeing none, roll call vote. Welch?
Yes.
Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
Marshall?
No.
Keough?
Keough, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So it passes by a vote of 4-1-0, 5 being present. Okay, next on the agenda is the insurance. Let me just make sure we didn't miss anything. The Insurance Advisory Committee Memorandum of Agreement. And so, Christy or Kim, will you be presenting?
So we have been meeting with the Insurance Advisory Committee. We actually started meeting with them last year prior to the pandemic. And so our discussions were put on hold. But we are ultimately proposing that we make some insurance changes. The insurance changes would create criteria for someone to be on the PPO plan. So basically they would have to live or have a dependent that lives out of the HMO network in order for them to have access to and be on the PPO plan that's offered by the town. As the board's aware, the employees pay 25% of the cost of the premium and the town pays 75% of the cost, and the PPO plan is more expensive. So we feel that this is a good, this is good for the town and the employees. The IAC voted to support this action on March 17th. And so if the board votes to support this, then each union will vote on their own and sign an individual MOA with the town. And once they've all agreed, we can implement the criteria beginning with the upcoming open enrollment. And so the MOA is in your packet. I would just say that if you go to the fourth whereas, it says, whereas the town and union have bargained over said changes, and it says pursuant to article blank, section blank of the parties' collective bargaining agreement, we would remove pursuant to the article and section of the collective bargaining agreement, and it would just read, the town and the union have bargained over said changes and have reached an agreement on same. And that's because this was taken from a previous MOA and there was a reference to the article and section that's no longer relevant in this case.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Patrick?
Yeah, Christy, I just wanted to get your guidance here. As you know, my wife works for the town, so I just want to make sure, my understanding of this is that it's going to impact future employees. So I didn't know if I should recuse myself from this topic or not. So just wanted to get your guidance.
Yeah, you should recuse yourself from this.
Okay, thank you.
Just to follow on what you said, so there is a grandfathering provision in there for employees who are currently on the PPO. But if they were to come off of the PPO or the town's health insurance altogether, they would not be able to come back unless they met that criteria.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain the motion.
I can make the motion. Marshall moves to approve the MOA and insurance changes as presented and to further authorize the town manager to execute the agreements with each union.
I'll second that, Selectman Johnson.
Thank you. Moved by Marshall, seconded by Johnson. Any further discussion?
I just want to thank Christy and Kim for all of their work with the IAC and all the parties that are involved for a really effective negotiation and, I think, a win-win. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, roll call vote. Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
Marshall?
Marshall, yes.
Keogh?
Keogh, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So it passes by a vote of 4. I guess is Patrick a abstention, or because it's a recusal, it's just 4-0?
4-0.
Okay, so it passes 4-0 for being present and participating. Thank you. And thank you, Patrick, for checking on that. Appreciate the diligence. Okay, next on the agenda is the discussion and vote to approve and execute bond anticipation notes.
I'm just looking to see if Leah or Bob are on the call because they have planned to be on the call. I don't know who this unknown is.
If Leah or Bob have dialed in by phone, *6 unmutes you.
Well, I just sent a text, so we'll see. This is, the board has been through this before, as I mentioned to my town manager. Oh, she's trying to get on, Alan.
Okay.
Can you see us?
Yes.
There you
Oh, got more than one thing connected. There we go. Can we hear you now, Leah?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
People on mute, Alan.
Are you getting feedback from me?
Is it also on your phone? Did you call in also?
No. Hold on.
Maybe turn down the volume a little
No,
bit.
it was me because I was unknown.
Ah, there we go.
So I was logged in as unknown, but I didn't plug my camera in until I was to get on. And so obviously I won't do that next time. I'll have to make sure that I plug my camera in before. It's a new system.
No worries. No worries. And we can hear you just fine now.
Awesome, thank you. So good evening. Bob and I are here this evening to request the board vote and approve the sale of $53 million worth of general obligation bonds. The funds on these notes will be used to pay off the note that we issued a year ago, and these notes in turn will come due in a year from now. The $53 million worth of projects funded by these notes are various school projects: the Hastings School, the high school, the Armstrong School, and the Thales School, the Forbes Municipal Building, the Nurse Street Cemetery, and a small amount of water mains. And as Christy had already mentioned in her town manager's report, we met with Standard & Poor's. We had our Standard & Poor's ratings call back in February, and on March 5th, Standard & Poor's reaffirmed the town's short-term rating of SP1+ and the long-term rating of AAA stable. And so the bonds that you are signing tonight were actually sold at the market on March 16th. There were 7 bidders, and the successful bidder was B of A Securities. And the interest rate on the bonds, when we pay them off, will be 2%, but due to a premium, the net interest costs are 0.138. So, and we would appreciate if, I know Sela has already reached out to you, but just a gentle reminder to come to Town Hall by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning so that we can get those bonds signed and then put them in the mail into FedEx to get them to the bank. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. And was that interest rate good, better than expected?
It's extremely good.
Okay, excellent. So congratulations, very good work. Very much appreciated. Any questions from members of the board? I'm seeing heads do this. Okay, so I believe this is one of those motions where we have to read the entire page and a half into the record.
That is correct.
I guess, Ian, as vice chair, I'm supposed to volunteer you?
That's fine. And just to be clear, I think that I'm only moving those sections that are voted, correct? I guess the question I'm asking, the last paragraph, I think that is just for the clerk to agree. We don't have to vote that.
Wait, you're on mute, Leah. It's okay.
Sorry. Yeah, that is absolutely correct, Ian. That's just certifying for Sela to sign off on.
Okay, so I will move that we hereby determine, in accordance with General Law, Chapter 70B, that the amount of the cost of the Fales Elementary School feasibility project authorized by a vote of the town passed on March 18th, 2017, Article 42, not being paid by the school facilities grant is $275,522. And we hereby approve of the issuance of notes and bonds in such amount under said General Law, Chapter 70B. Further move to approve the sale of $53,367,439, 2% general obligation bond anticipation notes, the notes of the town dated March 29th, 2021, and payable March 29th, 2022, to B of A Securities, Inc. at par and accrued interest, if any, plus a premium of $993,701.71. Further move that in connection with the marketing and sale of the notes, the preparation and distribution of a notice of sale and preliminary official statement dated March 9th, 2021, and a final official statement dated March 16th, 2021, each in such form as may be approved by the town treasurer, be and are hereby ratified, confirmed, approved, and adopted. Further move that the town treasurer and the Board of Selectmen be and hereby are authorized to execute and deliver a significant events disclosure undertaking in compliance with SEC Rule 15C2-12 in such forms as may be approved by bond counsel to the town, which undertaking shall be incorporated by reference in the notes for the benefit of the holders of the notes from time to time. Further move that we authorize and direct the town treasurer to establish post-issuance federal tax compliance procedures and continuing disclosure procedures in such forms as the town treasurer and bond counsel deem sufficient, or such procedures are currently in place to review and update said procedures in order to monitor and maintain the tax-exempt status of the notes and to comply with the relevant securities laws. Further move that any certificates or documents relating to the notes, collectively the documents, may be executed in several counterparts, each of which shall be regarded as an original and all of which shall constitute one and the same document. Delivery of an executed counterpart of a signature page to a document by electronic mail in a .pdf file or by other electronic transmission shall be as effective as delivery of a manually executed counterpart signature page to such document. And electronic signatures on any of the documents shall be deemed original signatures for the purposes of the documents and all matters relating thereto having the same legal effect as original signatures. And further move that each member of the Board of Selectmen, the town clerk, and the town treasurer be and hereby are authorized to take any and all such actions and execute and deliver such certificates, receipts, or other documents as may be determined by them or any of them to be necessary or convenient to carry into effect the provisions of the foregoing votes.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second?
Welch seconds.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing and seeing none, we'll move forward with the roll call vote. Marshall.
Marshall, yes.
Johnson.
Sorry, I was taking a drink to get my voice back. Johnson, yes.
Welch.
Welch, yes.
And Keogh.
EO, yes.
Okay, it passes by a vote of 5-0-0, 5 being present. Thank you very much, Leah and Bob, for excellent work on this. Very much appreciate it, and thank you for Ian for reading the shortest motion of the evening. Okay. Okay, next on the agenda
I'm
is...
sorry, Alan, just to be clear, these have to be notarized tomorrow morning. What time should we be in? I was not clear in the emails earlier today.
They have to be notarized by Wendy, so I'm assuming that Wendy is going to be in at 8.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll be there.
Okay, so between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You'll line up at the door.
Keep our social distance. Okay, so next on the agenda is the presentation on the Mass Save Municipal Partnership. And
Great. That's me. Thank you. I just wanted to spend a few minutes updating the board, as well as anyone listening tonight. We have kicked off our participation in the Mass Save Municipal Partnership Program. At your last meeting, in your last regular meeting in March, Pete Dunbeck was here to talk about the Climate Action Plan. And one of the strategies identified in the plan was to enhance participation in the Mass Save programs. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what those specifically are, what we are planning to do. We are a municipal, it's referred to as the Municipal Partnership Program. We are partnering, the town of Westboro is partnering with our utilities, National Grid and Eversource to promote participation in these programs. Anyone and everyone is encouraged to partake in the energy assessment. This is for residents, be it homeowners or renters, as well as businesses. Mass Save specifically targets, they have a turnkey program for small businesses, but if a business doesn't fit into that category, there is something for virtually everyone, and the utilities will help connect businesses to other programs from which they may benefit. I just want to share my screen. I just want to share something that is literally hot off the presses. Received earlier today. One of the benefits of partnering with the utilities is they are providing materials in the forms of brochures, inserts, bill flyers for us to distribute. This is a bill insert that will be going out with the upcoming water and sewer bill.
Kim, I'm not seeing it come across. Are you sharing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it.
I can see it. Patrick, if you click on the three dots and do change layout and click on auto or tiled.
So we have, this is just an example of one of several upcoming communication opportunities or approaches that we will be launching. Again, we're working in partnership with the utilities. They're involved as we prepare. For instance, we're working on a PSA with Westboro TV. Tim Kaler from the Planning Board and Sustainable Westboro has taken the lead, working with Karen Henderson and her team on that. And we are hoping that that will be released later this week. We will have more brochures that will look something similar to this with additional information that we will distribute throughout the community. We have a pretty lengthy list of venues and organizations where we plan to distribute these. We will be launching, it'll be off of, at this point, we expect it to be off of Sustainable Westboro's webpage, links directly to the Mass Save program. But right now, really the call to action tonight, and particularly as we start to push more materials out, are for individuals to go online and sign up. Again, the first step is the energy assessment. The utilities are doing these there online, given COVID. They are not sending individuals out to homes. They, in the past, would send an energy specialist out to the home to conduct the assessment. They are being conducted online and virtually today. They may ask you to submit some information, perhaps looking at utility bills, and then they may ask for pictures of various, windows, furnaces, things like that. Right here, I don't know if my highlights show up, but individuals can go online, masssave.com/OHEA, or by calling 866-527-SAVE, or that's 866-527-7283 to schedule those assessments. One of the benefits of conducting the assessment, it is no cost, no obligation. However, once the assessment is done, you will receive a report with energy efficiency suggestions, and then there are a variety of opportunities, things like weatherization, low cost, no cost weatherization. You can also receive upgrades for certain appliances, low cost, no cost. And then there are also things like just free LED light bulbs, power strips, those types of things. What we're really encouraging individuals to do is to take that first step, complete the assessment. One of the things we're very interested in doing, again, because we're partnering with the utilities, pushing the word out, we've talked about here in town, hoping that generally folks will have success when they contact the utilities and go through the process. But we don't want anyone to get stuck. And if they're having difficulty when they reach out through the Mass Save website or through trying to use the phone line, our expectation is we will create a form on the website and would welcome feedback specific to any concerns that folks have. I just want to check and see if there was anything else. In addition to the public service announcement, the sort of recorded presentation that we will be launching through Westboro TV this week, we hope. We're also going to schedule some public forums online, hope for some interaction if people have questions. We've talked about setting up some small group presentations at the senior center and in some other venues as we start to reopen. Additionally, we have submitted an article to the Community Advocate. They've offered to partner. I'm not sure if that will be published this week or next, but again, our goal for the next 9 months is to really continue to push information out and to see significant increases in the number of homeowners, renters, and business owners taking advantage of this opportunity. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to hit on tonight. And I hope, as we start to track progress, would love to come back and share that with the board as well.
And we'd love to get an update as things progress. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Shelby, yes.
Kim, in the packet we received, maybe you said this and I missed it. How do grants work for the town? The opportunity for the grants with this program?
Well, the town is eligible to receive up to $15,000 in grant funding if we hit certain metrics.
Okay, so and so I presume that's the number of assessments completed or contacts made or something like that. Those parameters.
Correct.
And are the grants then are allocated to what?
I'm sorry. So that's grant funding specifically coming back to the town to support the partnership efforts. So things like the utility bill insert that I just showed you, we have to pay for that to be printed and included in the utility bill mailing. We've talked about some other opportunities to do things like maybe get a thermal imaging camera if that can support some of the home energy assessment work. There's going to be additional materials that we will likely need to print. We've talked about doing a postcard mailing. So when you start talking about those types of things, that's where we anticipate spending probably a good chunk of that grant funding.
So, but we have to achieve certain milestones or benchmarks in order to get the grants?
They dole it out in allocations, yes.
Okay, all right. It would be, I think it would be helpful, and I would be interested in understanding kind of what those benchmarks are. If there's a formula or whatever, if you could share that with the board, that would be great. What is the time frame of this program, remind me?
So the partnership was 12 months. It started in January, but there was some preliminary work with the utilities. So the outreach efforts are beginning in earnest this week. And we have
Okay.
through the end of the calendar year.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you. Thanks, Kim.
Okay, thank you. Patrick.
Yeah, Kim, thank you for updating us on this. Some great work here. I really appreciate it. And I apologize if I missed it. I'm just curious, is there, has there been any thought on how we connect with the people of need in the community? I think we've learned through COVID that there are challenges with, for example, our shut-ins and our elderly and getting them engaged with things like this. I'm just curious with them and others in the community, is there kind of a proactive approach that's been considered on how we get to them and perhaps even go so far as to help them? I'm thinking of the elderly person that may not necessarily be familiar with how to do an online form, but they need a new boiler, for example.
Yeah, so we do have various strategies to target various populations that have traditionally been underserved by these programs. We've made connections to human service providers in the community, places like the food pantry. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Patrick, can you mute? Thank you.
Places like the food pantry may be willing to include the brochures that we're able to obtain in their distribution. We've reached out to other human service providers through the various faith organizations. We've had requests to come share information with some of these groups. And then specifically the seniors, we have talked about a number of strategies, including there is a handyman position at the senior center is someone who may be able to go out and provide some assistance for seniors who have difficulty completing the online, taking the photos and doing the virtual assessment. So, yep. And this is the benefit of being part of the partnership. There are numerous other communities throughout the state who are engaged in these activities, and we have monthly meetings and are able to hear what other folks are doing.
Terrific. I will eagerly look forward to hearing about how the adoption from the community is, because I think this is really an important thing, and I'm looking forward to people engaging throughout the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sean? Oh, wait. Sean, and then Shelby, go back to you.
No, Kim, thank you. I appreciate that we have reached out to do this program. I know there's just a specific number of towns who are approved for this program by Mass Save. So I think that's fantastic, and looking forward to seeing the results on this, and looking forward to signing up myself.
Okay, Ian, and then Shelby, I know you had a follow-up question, but legal one's through.
I have nothing further.
Okay, thank you. Shelby, follow-up?
Follow-up question, and just a comment to add on to what Kim had added to Patrick's question. Kim presented at the task force meeting and provided an update on this program, and I believe some of these brochures will be available in translated languages too. Kim, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So that's a big lift right there. So that was exciting. Kim, I'm just wondering if we know what across various communities, what the participation rate is when you sort of take all the different demographics, or if we have a target.
It's not based on participation rate, because the challenge we bump up against is the utilities treat a lot of the data, their customer data. It's proprietary. We're able to get some data and some information from them. What they're looking to track is year-over-year increases in participation in the programs. So that's what our metrics are based on. They track annual, number of households in Westboro who complete the home energy audits, and that's one of the indicators that they want to see increased by a certain percentage as we embark on this over the coming year. They're looking for a 10% increase in online residential energy assessments. Then they're looking for, specific increases around specific initiatives resulting from those assessments. So people, increases in folks who take advantage of weatherization opportunities and things like that.
Do they have to, I know that part of the program, they give you a list of mass save vendors. That's part of the program, at least as I understand it, that you can work with that will can further kind of maximize saving opportunities. Do you know offhand if homeowners or renters or, well, I guess homeowners choose another vendor, if that still sort of counts, that they track that improvement?
Yes.
For saving, efficiency savings. Thank you. Okay, super. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Shelby, thank you for your follow-ups. You asked my questions. And so Ian has a follow-up.
Yeah, sorry, and Kim, you may have said this, and if you did, I apologize for missing it. But for folks who have already gone through the Mass Save program, are they ineligible for this? So is this looking for new people to sign up and new adoption?
I would have to get back to you with a specific answer. Here's what I would encourage anyone, if it hasn't been within the past, 12 to 18 months, I would encourage individuals to reach out, to make the phone call, or to go online and see if you might be available. Again, there's at the time that if an assessment was done 18 months ago, there could have been conditions that changed or other programs that are now in place. So I would encourage folks to reach out and just ask that question.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any final questions? So thank you, Kim, for taking the lead and for the participation of the team on this initiative. It'll be interesting to see how the communications plan works, how we reach, and what some of the results are. And so we'll look for an update in the not too distant future as the plan and the program gets rolling. Okay, so next on our agenda is a discussion about our right of first refusal for 64 Otis Street.
So as the board is aware, we were notified of a pending sale of 64 Otis Street, which is a Chapter 61A piece of property, which means that the board has a right of first refusal. And that the board, if it were to exercise its right of first refusal, would need to match the purchase price. Our process has been to forward these types of notifications to the Open Space Preservation Committee and get their recommendation on the parcel. We did get that recommendation, and I'm just going to read it. On March 16th, 2021, the Open Space Preservation Committee met to discuss the parcel of land at 64 Otis and to make a recommendation on the town of Westboro rights under Chapter 61A. The Open Space Preservation Committee voted unanimously 5-0 to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that the town not exercise its right of first refusal concerning the property at 64 Otis Street. The consensus was that it would not be in the best interest of the town of Westboro to purchase the property given the price and potential environmental cleanup costs, as well as the possibility of future tax revenue through commercial industrial development given the zoning. So that was your recommendation from the Open Space Committee. You also did receive a recommendation from the Planning Board. At its meeting on March 9th, the Planning Board voted unanimously 5-0 to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that the town not exercise its right of first refusal concerning the property at 64 Otis. The Planning Board's consensus was that since the property is zoned general industrial, IB, and surrounded by other similarly zoned and developed industrial and commercial properties, that it was more advantageous to the town to allow this property to be developed in a manner for which it is planned and zoned. If the land were in a residential neighborhood or adjacent to other town-owned property or other open space, the board may have had other considerations. So those are the two formal recommendations that you received from other committees. The board also, I forwarded some correspondence with the Conservation Commission chair, and then also an email that you had received from a resident explaining their interest in the town purchasing the property. So the purchase and sale agreement is for $6.1 million. And the town, as I said, has the right to purchase the land for the agreed upon price. And so tonight for your consideration would be to vote whether or not to exercise your right of first refusal.
Okay, thank you. So before we go to a motion, any comments or discussion from members of the board? Okay, then I will entertain a motion.
I would move that the board not exercise the town's right of first refusal pursuant to General Law, Chapter 61A, to purchase the parcel of land located at 64 Otis Street, Westboro, containing 36.13 acres, more or less, identified by the assessors as parcel 25-3A-0, and shown as Lot 1 on the plan recorded with the Worcester South District Registry of Deeds in Plan Book 79, page 617, and that said property may be sold to Atlantic Management Corporation or its designee for consideration of $6.1 million.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I can second.
Theo. Oh,
I think Patrick Welch was in there just a little before. Okay, we have motion and seconded. Any further discussion? Select Board Member Marshall.
Thanks, Ellen. I think it's always important that, what I would consider like a really hot item like this comes up, and it's like all this land, and why wouldn't the town consider purchasing it? And there's like no discussion, no questions from the board. And I think that, maybe there will be after I make some comments, but I think it's just important for the public to understand that we do have conversations in executive session to talk about negotiations of this type. They're in executive session for obvious reason, because we're allowed to do that. And I think sometimes if you're a bystander, you're sort of going, why aren't they going to discuss this? And we were just talking, a half hour ago about not having enough space for soccer fields, right? So I just make that point that, we do have that opportunity as a board under the privilege of executive session. So that's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Ian.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Shelby. I think and maybe we should have said it before the motion, but there's this discussion here. I think you're spot on there. There's discussion in executive session, but for the public to know, it's I think the town manager noted the kind of the adopted policy of the Board of Selectmen, that we followed that. We looked for the recommendations of the Open Space Committee, which we received and was read into the records in the minutes, and as well as the planning board, although that's not required, it was added to that. We did get a memo from a resident kind of opposing or suggesting that we should. But personally, in mind, looking at our available monies and kind of prioritization of parcels that we've bought, if you've looked at others we've bought, one that from an ask.
Ian, you're cutting in and out.
Opportunity for us. I apologize. I think I'm having bad service.
Yeah, you did cut out a little bit there. I don't know if you want to quickly summarize.
Yes, summary. Sorry.
Oh, no, now he's frozen.
Can you hear me now or not?
Yes. Oh, no. If you can turn off your camera for a second and try. There we go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, just in summary, I think the point was that kind of to follow the process that we've adopted as a board, take the recommendation provided by Open Space and their unanimous vote not to pursue, and also looking at properties that we've purchased as in comparison to this that to me felt much more in line with the conservation ideals and support that we would expect from these committees. And again, 6.1 million, 36 acres. If you do the math there, it's much more than we've paid for other pieces of more recently property and acreage size for conservation, recreation, and municipal use. So again, it feels that this is most suited for the zoning that's there. It's in the master plan, as is noted by the planning board, as zoned for this type of property. So selling it and having it developed there, for me personally, is kind of the right thing to do for the town. To some of the discussions we've had about enhancing or growing our industrial commercial tax base, this is one way to do that for this property that within 61A has limited the minimize the tax revenue coming to the town from that piece of property.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from Sean or Patrick?
No, I'm good, Alan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I saw a head shake no from Patrick as well.
All set. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess my comment is very quickly similar in nature, that this doesn't connect to any other open space, that it is surrounded by active commercial industrial utilization and zoned in the master plan is recommending and saying that it stays zoned that way, as that's under development. I know there's interest in having additional active recreation facilities, particularly west of the Rotary, over time. And I know that the town is, has looked at and has potentially other opportunities on other properties that serve that purpose better, in large part because they'd be located closer to residential neighborhoods and residences, and wouldn't require a car ride or public transportation to get to, where this parcel in particular is fairly isolated. So I also support us not exercising our right of first refusal. And so if there are no further comments, we'll move to a roll call vote. Marshall.
Marshall, yes.
Welch.
Welch, yes.
Keogh.
Keogh, yes.
Johnson.
Johnson, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So the motion passes to not exercise our right of first refusal by a vote of 5-0-0, 5 being present. Okay, next on the agenda is the animal control bylaw, the poultry amendment. And so I don't know if ACO McKendrick would like to start or Christy would like to introduce this.
I'll let Christy start. So we took comments that we had received from the last meeting, and then also I had asked the board to forward comments to me last week, and so any comments were incorporated. I also included in the packet comments received, and so I did provide you with a clean copy of the bylaw, and I've also included it in the most recent version 6 of the town meeting warrant. By process, I would like to have the board finalize the wording, and then we'll submit it to town council for one more review prior to the warrant closing at the end of April.
Okay, great. Now, Shelby had submitted some information recently on this. So, and there were a number of items, so I'm wondering if Christy and Linda had a chance to look through them. The first set are the number of grammatical issues, headings, some clarifications in wording, we can cut and paste this into the record with the minutes, but rather than reading through them all.
We don't need to discuss the grammar stuff and, in the formatting. I just wanted to make sure it was known because it wasn't ready for prime time.
I just wanted to make sure that they're comfortable with those suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of formatting, I think, that's fine. We can go through that. But I think any substantive changes, I think Shelby was planning to discuss with you tonight.
Okay. Yeah. So there are some substantive changes. Shelby, I believe G was your first substantive change or question, if I'm reading your comments correctly. It was enforcement and penalties is number 2 intended to read.
Yeah, so hang on one second, Alan. Correct, yes, thank you. Right, so I guess as clarification, perhaps Melinda, you could help. It was not clear to me on how the items in number G2, A through D apply. I'm not sure if my email made sense the way I wrote it with.
My intent was either to pick and choose individually what's appropriate to the situation. Of course, requesting a hearing would be after people refuse. If I tell somebody to remove a bird, I'll give them a couple of weeks to remove it. But if something like soundproofing negates the issue, then there's no real reason to make them remove the bird. So the idea was to be able to pick and choose to try to get the appropriate, least intrusive, I guess.
Yep. Okay. So I think just from a formatting perspective, I think at the end of B and C, it should be and or. I don't know. You let the attorneys take care of it. Let the attorneys take care of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then in that same section in G, there is no reference to the time period of receipt of the 3 complaints. I know that there's a separate section around compliance and coming into compliance, but it's concerning to me that there's not a time frame in here. And I guess again, I apologize, but I was not at the public hearing, though I did watch it. I don't think this was discussed in depth, unless I missed it.
I'm not sure what type of time frame you would apply. If I had one complaint 6 months later, another complaint, is that too long a time frame?
Well, that's exactly.
But if I've already spoken to the individual, I have a complaint, say somebody ends up with a rooster, I have a complaint, I speak with them, they think they've solved the issue. 6 months later, they end up with another one, they just found out that they hadn't had time to resolve the issue. So that's a second complaint, but it's on a different animal. So what I was thinking was if I run into continuous complaints on the same animal, I want to be able to apply something that's reasonable. But if it's something that's occurring once a year or twice a year, that's not really a huge nuisance, and this is like 6 in the afternoon, not 3 in the morning type stuff.
Yeah. So I think I might suggest maybe the language after receiving 3 or more complaints of the same nature, because if you have 6 brown chickens, it's difficult to know who's the offending chicken, or I mean, I guess a rooster you'd know, but I'm just saying, or 3 white, or 6 white ducks, you don't know which duck is the loudest quacker of them all, right? So. So maybe that language could be tweaked, 3 or more complaints of the same nature, or something to that effect. Or if odor is the issue, right? So you don't know who's creating the odor, it's just an issue of odor.
I was actually thinking 3 or more complaints regarding the same animal or animals. Right, because that says, if you've got a flock of ducks and there's a complaint, it's about that flock.
Yep.
But if it's a rooster and you get rid of a rooster and you go buy new chicks in the spring, and one turns out to be a rooster, it's a different animal, it's a different group of animals. You'd be starting the clock over on dealing with that animal or that group of animals.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Good suggestion. I think it probably for reading flow more than anything, this might be more grammatical and formatting, but I felt like exemptions should be at the front of the document, but maybe they're standardly behind it, at the end. I feel like, if you're reading a policy, you need to know if it applies to you or not. So just as a suggestion, that might be moved forward. Compliance deadline. I feel like, I know we've discussed this a few times as a board. I feel like 18 months to comply with this is far too long. I would recommend that 12 months is reasonable for structures and maximum number of birds. 12 months to comply with size and structure. And I would even say 6 to 9 months for flock size is what I would propose. Or 12 months, I guess 18 months seems like an excessive amount of time for people to come into compliance. If you're a neighbor and there's a problem, you're waiting 18 months for it to be fixed. That's not acceptable.
That one, I would say to have at least 6 months. There aren't a lot of people that are going to have to reduce their flock or change their structure. But I would want to have the people that currently have flocks to have some time frame in which to do it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if it's 12,
I think we changed the wording a little bit because it was never my intent that somebody who says they have a problem with a rooster, I wasn't intending to make anybody wait 6 months to get rid of a rooster. So that's why we changed the wording so that all the rest of the bylaw, as soon as legally can be put into effect.
So would you be comfortable with 12 months to comply?
Yes.
I'm sorry, who's the question to, Alan?
Well, it's both to Melinda. Shelby suggested 12 months for size and structure, 6 or 9 months for flock size. I guess the question is, for the size and structure, is there a feeling that 12 months is reasonable?
I would think 12 months for all, but just to make it easier.
Okay.
That's uniform.
Shelby?
That's fine.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, I appreciate the board's kind of indulgence here. So the other thing that I guess I'll stay on in terms of changes, because I don't want to talk about fees until at the end. I really feel like we need to have something in there around roosters, around limiting it to 1 per property or something, but that continues to be, as I read through all the comments, continues to be the greatest concern by those that are very supportive of chickens, but who are not supportive of the noise. And so I'll just quickly go through the comments, and then Alan, you can direct the discussion however you want. The other piece is on just containment. I guess Melinda, I wanted to get your sense of that the language that we have around size and structure, that you feel like that clearly states that that any type of poultry cannot free range on someone else's property, that this bylaw protects abutters.
Yes.
Obviously without permission, just like dogs, right? Yeah.
Some people are going to enjoy having them come over and provide the free pest control.
Yep, no, and that's fine.
That's fine. Others don't want that. I don't want the birds coming into the roadways, and I think that's in there.
Right, but this policy does state, and I'm sorry, I'm just looking for it, does state that they
have to stay on their own property.
Right, okay, good.
That would be a situation where if I'm getting complaints from the neighbor, I would say put up some kind of fencing.
The owner should put up some kind of fencing.
Yeah.
Yep. The owner of the chickens.
And that's one of the remedies in the bylaw.
Yeah, okay. Okay. The other piece here is that I read in some of the comments that when issues come up with complaints, and I don't think it's addressed here, so this is why I'm bringing it up, that owners are being asked to provide proof of the issue, like, show me what the problem is. And I'm using an example of the rooster stopped crowing, or the chickens are now no longer on my property. So they can't, take a picture of it, or they didn't have their phone or what have you. So how is that addressed with enforcement?
With almost any complaint that I receive, I contact the person who owns the animal that's being complained about and notify them that I've received this complaint. And this goes for all animals. I don't necessarily say where the complaint came from. And a lot of people will say, oh, no, it wasn't my dog, it wasn't my whatever. And that's fine. Understand, I received this complaint. They said it was yours. Please be more aware of the situation. That's pretty much where I start with all of them. And I would with these as well.
Yeah. Okay. And would that be considered like complaint number one?
It could be.
Okay. All right. So the final piece is that I think if we're going to go through this effort, and Melinda, you obviously spend a fair amount of time chasing chickens, truly, chasing a lot of things, 2 and 4 legged. I feel like, an effective way to manage this and candidly to offset costs is that we have fees for people that want to have chickens. And I'm proposing to the board that, whether you have 1 chicken or 50 allowed by, your lot size or ducks or whatever it is, that it's an annual fee of $25. And this will create an opportunity to give people the bylaw. It gives people an opportunity to connect with you as the animal control officer if they have questions. And it establishes a documentation for data gathering and budget management. So those are my final comments.
So I sort of disagree. I never put in any kind of a fee. You can put one in if you want. That's up to you. But you do need to consider a few questions. First of all, who's going to collect the fee? Who's going to be responsible for keeping track of if people have paid those fees or not? And where you're going to develop your list of who has these properties, and that'll come in a minute. And as far as what's available right now through the Board of Health, your stable permits are only $15. So I would recommend, something like maybe 10, because the stable permits for the larger animals and much bigger quantities of animals under stable permits, depending on your property size, is only 15 per year. And again, as I said, how are you going to develop the list?
I mean, the responsibility for that, I think, would fall to the town manager to determine where it would go. I think it would be overstepping my recommendation.
Oh, Christy, you're on mute.
I can't hear you.
Did you lose your... Are you on the wrong computer? Did you lose your volume again?
Okay. Maybe I need to say something about developing the list. This is where we kind of cross the border between animal control officer and animal inspector. As the animal inspector, and this I said before, I'm required to go and count the poultry and develop a list. However, that list is actually the property of the Department of Agricultural Resources, Division of Animal Health. That's the state. And it's confidential information. I cannot share that with the town. I give you a total at the end of the year, but I can't give you that list. So we can't use my list for that purpose.
And why is that list different than licensing dogs?
It belongs to the Department of Agricultural Resources, Division of Animal Health. and that's why I said it's a fine line between being the animal control officer and the animal inspector.
Okay,
They developed the list solely for the purpose of being able to manage disease outbreaks and other disasters. You can ask them for a copy of it, but they will not give it to you if they suspect you're doing it for taxation or permitting processes.
yep, okay, no, that makes it clear. Yep,
So I maybe should have made that. I wanted to try to make that a little bit more clear. All right. Christy, I don't know if you're back or not.
so Alan, I'm interested in the, I mean, I think the fees piece, Melinda, you've addressed. I mean, I don't like the response, but I certainly understand it, and that delineation. I don't think it's critical to this being a successful bylaw, but I am interested in the board's thoughts about the roosters.
Okay. Do other members of the board have thought about roosters?
Can you just refresh us on, sorry, yeah, can you just refresh us on where we stand in that conversation? There's been a number of different points back and forth over the last couple of weeks, and I just want to understand where the current proposal is on roosters.
My understanding from the policy is that the policy is silent on it.
Yeah, at this point, the policy is silent on it, unless the rooster causes a nuisance, in which case the most common nuisance of roosters is noise. That would need to be addressed. Evidently, there's a collar, a fashionable collar that roosters can wear that prevents them from crowing, or it could be that they're kept indoors in a soundproof coop for certain hours or some other remediation, but that it would be that no limit on the number or having roosters and the number of roosters unless it becomes a nuisance and the problem can't be resolved.
So I guess this goes back to Alan, if I can speak, is that all right?
Yes, please go ahead.
So I guess that goes back to the question around the time period, right? If we allow roosters in the town and somebody complains, do they have to wait months and months and months to get some sort of remediation for a loud rooster, right? A number of complaints over a period of time. Could they call one day and then the next day and the next day, and then they've got their 3 complaints and that's enough? Now the rooster needs to be addressed. Not sure how that would work, but I guess knowing that the majority of the communities seem to be going towards a non-rooster rule, I'd be curious to kind of hear the other board members' comments on, is this an issue that we foresee happening, and do we believe that the mitigations that Melinda has put forth will sufficiently allow remediation in a quick enough time period for a complaining, resident?
I personally, I think that the bylaw isn't strong enough to support Melinda to do that in a reasonable way. I think would be put in a difficult situation if she were to get, using your example, 3 consecutive complaints in a shortened period of time. It's going to be very difficult for her to say, remove the rooster. It's been a week and I got 3 complaints. I think that puts her as the animal control officer in a difficult position. I mean, maybe she's very comfortable with it, but I think a clearer policy on no roosters. You find out that you have a rooster, poor guy, nothing against roosters, lovely creatures, but it needs to find a new home that's not here in Westboro. I mean, I just think that that's much cleaner. Regardless, if you have a quiet rooster, no one's going to know the difference, I guess, right? But I don't know if there is such a thing. But if you have a quiet rooster, then no one's going to know. I guess you just don't get any eggs.
As I said, I already know. What about the ones that are already in town that aren't?
Well, if they're noisy and they're causing a problem, that they're in their own category. I guess that goes back to the noise piece of it, and maybe we feel that the language is strong enough. Patrick, to your point, I feel like we've been around but haven't settled on this one in particular.
I do understand. I also, Shelby, you may have missed my comments on how people end up with the roosters. It's not intentional. And I just feel if they can get it to quiet down to where it's not a problem, I don't have an issue with it being there. I understand what you're saying about the 3 nights in a row. I would want people to be able to have a week or two to try to quiet the things down. They can't acquire the collar, on Amazon any quicker than a few days. But I also will try to work with the neighbor and the owner to try to address the issue. And in the future, if it becomes a bigger problem, we can put in a ban on roosters. I just didn't want to start at that point. That was my feeling about it.
Sure. Yeah, and I think most people, what we heard from the public is that they are reasonable about it and they want to be good neighbors, and they'll work with you and with the neighbor to address the issue, but they just want to see progress to that, pretty quickly, particularly when it's live.
And I think we have a lot more people with chickens than you guys all realize. There's quite a few.
That is true. Any thoughts, Ian?
No, I guess. Well, no. Yeah. Yes. I think we can spend a lot of time trying to make perfection here, and I think from what Melinda says, and I rely heavily on her expertise.
Ian's having network troubles.
Roosters, not all roosters.
I'm sorry.
I'll shut that out again. No, I think I said, to me, it's perfection. We're trying to get perhaps to perfection here over kind of getting something in place that's necessary to get in place. And, I think we have a lot of roosters in town. What we're really concerned with here is nuisance roosters. I think as Melinda said, if someone has a rooster and they've done what's needed to be done, that it's not a nuisance to anybody, then putting something in that you can't have it automatically forces something, Melinda. It's almost like an inspection or whatever. I think, to me, this gets us to a point where we're okay. And if we do need to fix it going forward, we fix it going forward. So I guess my take is, personally, I don't know that we need to put a specific limit in here. But again, I'm not sticking my heels in on it either. If the rest of the board says we think we need one, I'm fine with that too. But I personally just don't think it's necessary.
Okay, Sean, any comments?
I think I agree with Ian. I think we're putting total numbers of chickens and things of that nature. And, I tend to leave it up to Melinda as she goes to deal with these issues as they get sorted out. And if it turns out that, this doesn't handle it, then maybe we need to make updates to this bylaw in the future. But I guess I would hate to eliminate these poor guys, because there was a couple of bad actors, So I think I'd rather come up a little short in this first effort than go too far and have to want to backtrack.
Okay. I was sure when you said bad actors, you're going to say bad eggs.
That would have been better.
Okay. So with these comments, I think aside from some of the grammatical and heading clarifications, the one change that we have consensus on would be compliance would be 12 months instead of 18. Okay, and so that, I know we don't need a vote on this. So with the cleanup and with that one change, and Shelby, you comfortable with using enforcement to address the rooster situation?
Yep.
Okay, then I think we can go forward and have this off to town council for review, and we'll have one final opportunity, I guess a bite at the apple, if you will, to continue on the agricultural theme before it goes to town meeting. Oh, Christy?
Yeah, the other change was in G2. I added the 3 or more complaints of the same nature. I'm sorry, we had said.
Same animal or group of animals.
Same animal. Right, of the same animal or group of animals, and then the 18 to 12 months I got. So I was having the technical difficulties when you were talking about the fees. So you decided not to move forward with any fees?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
I appreciate the board's patience in reading my comments that were sent out today and not earlier.
Okay, well, thank you. It's, the devil's in the details on some of these things. So, we want to keep it moving, but we definitely, it might not be perfect, but we definitely want to get it right.
And I'm certainly available to all of you, individually, if you have questions.
Okay, Ian?
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to belabor this, but just a question. It kind of relates to what we heard in our open forum this evening. Well, I think you've talked about in our public hearing and other times that basically our bylaws are for properties that are 2 acres or under, because greater than 2 acres then falls under mass law. And I know that's addressed in here. I guess the question I have is, because I think the property that was discussed tonight is actually over 2 acres. So it would not fall under our bylaws. I may be incorrect there, but I just was looking at the assessor's record. I think it's slightly over 2 acres. But I guess the question is there anything in this bylaw? So one of the concerns sounds like there's been chickens in the street and cars and buses and other things have to stop or in neighbors' yards. Do you have enforcement control over that via this bylaw or via state law, or is it, hey, you're over 2 acres, so your free-range chickens are free to go anywhere?
No, they still would have to be kept on their own properties.
Okay, yeah. So they have to be on their own property, and if that can be done without a fence, it's done without a fence. But it's the homeowner's responsibility to keep the birds contained.
And you can enforce that?
I believe so.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, anything further?
Well, I hate to ask the question, but does the bylaw need to reference the 2+ acres and the ACO's ability to enforce something under that, or point someone, in that direction?
Well, I think where we got it, if I remember correctly, in the public hearing under the exemptions, exemption B, which was
The farming and agriculture is defined?
Yeah, and that's where it's defined as 2 acres or greater. Melinda, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's how I knew.
Does that apply in a residential district zone?
People that own over 2 acres in what had been agricultural, and all of this area had been agricultural, can, with a couple of provisions, they can apply to the Department of Ag to become a mini farm. So that's where that comes in. But we're really trying to deal with mostly chickens on residential properties. That's the biggest concern here.
Okay, so but under HB as in boy, someone would have had to gone through the process to apply to be deemed a farming or agricultural land as defined by the Mass General Law.
Probably. If they wanted to push it, yeah, if they wanted to push it, they'd probably have to go to the Department of Ag and get some stuff from them. But at that point, they've got enough space to keep a moderate-sized flock of birds. So
I guess I just want to say on record, I think that this creates a gray area that it already is a problem, at least on one property, and it's unclear to me what tools Melinda has to enforce, to recognize the rights of those property owners as well as their abutters.
I'm not sure what property you're talking about, which is okay. I didn't hear the earlier section.
Well, let's just say any property over, that has 2 or more acres that happens to have
If your
chickens.
animals are going on to somebody else's property and annoying them, yeah, there are things that we can do under Department Act.
Okay, and to Ian's point, you have the ability to enforce that, whether it's through your general charge as ACO or this policy?
Yeah, pretty much.
She said yes.
Okay, sorry, I can't hear.
It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's in our material, so and it was spoken to by the neighbor tonight, but it's 55 Warren Street was the property that was addressed at our meeting tonight.
Okay, and I missed that. I'm not sure what the issue there is, but I think that they do have the agricultural standard. It was a farm.
So I understand Shelby's question, and I think it makes sense. So when we do town council review, we can get some clarity on that question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything further? Okay. So we have a charge to Christy and the team to get this out to town council with those 2 changes plus clarification on properties over 2 acres and the town's ability to enforce rules as those are under the mini farm or the agricultural definition by state regulation, and clarify that. Okay. Thank you very much, Melinda.
Thank you all. And as I said, I'll be available for all of you.
That is appreciated. Okay, next on the agenda, and I apologize, we are a little behind the schedule on time today, is MBTA parking expansion.
I can try to be quick. As some of you may remember, we've talked to our delegation a few times about the potential to increase parking at the MBTA. Included in your packet was I think 2004 site plan that showed where an additional approximately 56 spaces would go. As recently as as recently as this past year, we've been working with our delegation on this, and they had come before the MBTA had come before the Conservation Commission requesting some allowances to begin removing vegetation to start to create this parking lot. One of the concerns that was raised, and you saw that in my correspondence with Jordan, our conservation director, as well as in the documents that he provided related to that hearing, was that there was no clear plan going forward after removal of the vegetation. And so that's why at the time it was denied by the Conservation Commission. But in reaching out to our delegation recently, we discussed the need for this board, being a new board, to have this discussion and just affirm whether or not this is a project that you would continue to support and would like our delegation, specifically Reps Kane and Dykema, to continue to move forward with. There could be some opportunity with some of the money coming down from the federal government where this could be a good timing for that. And so we would like to forward a letter of support to the delegation if the board is supportive.
Okay. Patrick, you're on mute. Do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I guess thank you for that summary, Christy. I wonder if the Conservation Board Committee would make the same recommendation. I think if I understood, they made that recommendation in February of last year before COVID, and there's obviously been a significant reduction in the volume of commuter traffic. You drive down past that area now, and I don't think there's a handful of cars in that parking lot on any given day, based on my recent experience. So I'm just curious, is there a need to go back and get a reassessment from them, a confirmation for them, their support on this before we as a board provide that affirmation?
So they would have to go back to the Conservation Commission because conservation would remain part of the permitting process. And so, they're not really looking so if the board feels like this is a worthy project, they would still be subject to all of the requirements under the Conservation Commission and any other permit that they needed.
Yeah, so a follow up on that, with all the various different committees and towns that are working on, the master plan, on the climate action committee, and the reduction of greenhouse gases. And we talk about the reduction of blacktop pavement in the town to prevent the heat around. Again, I wonder if this is appropriate. I certainly would have seen the demand and the need before COVID. That parking lot, people were parking on the street. There was a lot of issues down there, so I definitely would have supported it. But now I don't know if there's a demand that warrants that increase of parking. Was it 53 spaces? And I'm not sure what the process is to get any sort of recommendation from those committees that might be interested to voice their concerns.
So it is identified as a draft goal under the Master Plan Steering Committee, the Transportation Subcommittee. So we haven't finalized the master plan, but they have 2 draft goals that speak to this. One specifically engage MBTA and other pertinent partners in identifying and implementing opportunities to expand access to the commuter rail station, including through the continued expansion of parking. And then the second is to work with the MBTA to improve the facility conditions at Westboro's commuter rail station. So, so I think we heard from the Master Plan Steering Committee as much as we would as a draft goal. But if there are other committees that the board is interested in hearing from, we could do that too.
Okay. Ian, Sean, Shelby, any questions or comments? Shelby.
A question?
Shelby, then Ian.
Yeah, just a question. Patrick, I think yours is a good one. I would assume that as part of any sort of process that they would be going through, much like some of the presentation we heard earlier today on 4400, that there would be a justification for why they're going to spend money to do this. So I would think that at some point our support here is not, isn't saying, yep, go ahead with the project. It's saying we're supportive of pursuing it. I mean, that's my support here. And I do think that given the balancing act of transportation needs and Westboro being along the line and people still need to get to where they need to go, that, I'd be in support of this project. Christy, my question from Derek's memo, April 16, 2019 is there's a permit that requires closure. I'm wondering if we know if at the, to be recorded at the Worcester Registry of Deeds. I'm wondering if we know if that's been closed. I know it's, again, not contingent on this, but before we would provide our support, or be contingent upon closure of that.
Yeah, I can certainly follow up with Jordan on that.
I remember that being a point of discussion at length when Derek presented this. So I would want that contingent upon, that support.
You're on mute, Alan.
Ian, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, I think I absolutely understand Patrick's point, but I do know that, prior to the pandemic, we had numerous complaints. Basically, if you weren't at the train station by 7, you weren't parking. We had people parking on the grassy areas, and the police were there constantly ticketing and other stuff. Or, we talked and did work on the getting parking spots on the road as a kind of interim space to provide more and safer parking. So I guess my take at this point, and echoing other things they said, that to kind of continue to engage the delegation, say we support them pursuing this, because I do think this could be the appropriate time to get funding for something that, when things get back to normal, we need it, the money may not be there. And then it's, decision as to whether we would be able to get it or it's too late. So, and I think
Oh, Ian's still having Wi-Fi problems.
Because Christy said, I think what they're looking for from us is, hey, do you want to? I'm trying.
Ian, you're freezing again. Okay, we can't quite hear you yet, Ian.
Yeah, I tried to shut it off. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
We can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I think the final piece was just that, I think the delegation is just looking at, are we supportive of them continue to do work on this? And if we're not, they'll stop and focus on other things. But to me, I think it's still a worthy cause for us to continue.
Just real quick, thank you. I just want to say thank you for the additional background from both Shelby and Ian on that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I guess from my perspective, I do think we want the delegation to continue working on this, as the MBTA has, for a whole variety of reasons through COVID-19, been reassessing service levels and demand. And I expect that as we come out of COVID, we will see a demand. And certainly if at any point in time the MBTA felt that they were going to be cutting service on the Framingham-Worcester line and through the Westboro station, that because they don't expect demand, or there's evidence that it's not going to ever go back to its prior levels, that they would simply stop pursuing the project. But they're currently interested in pursuing it. They're still working on it. I think we should continue to have our delegation look and try and secure funding for it. We do know from other communications that the MBTA is still looking to add a third set of rails in the right-of-way and to be able to accommodate taller commuter trains, newer commuter cars as well, so that they're still at this point planning on expanding ridership on the line and expanding service to Westboro in our part of the state. So I would be supportive of having the delegation continue to work on our behalf. Okay, any other questions or comments? If not,
Alan, just quickly.
Go ahead, Sean, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I think I'm in agreement as well. I think as long as I agree with the others that, as long as the evidence is there that after this period that those parking spaces are seen again as necessary, I think at some point we probably will bounce back to that amount of need. I mean, certainly it was, if you couldn't get a parking spot before 7 or after 7 before, then they were probably several hundred spaces short of what they needed. So I support it as well.
Okay, so on that, I will entertain the motion.
I'll make that motion. I thought that Ian, who rides it, would, but he's stuck. So I move to authorize the town manager to send a letter of support for this project to the delegation.
And a second.
I'll second that.
Johnson seconds. Any further conversation? Hearing none, roll call vote. Marshall?
Marshall, yes.
Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
Welch?
Welch, yes.
Keogh?
Keogh, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes, so it passes 5-0-0, 5 being present. Okay, so moving forward, next on the agenda is a discussion vote on a letter of support for the proposed project by Mass General Brigham. I believe it's Integrated Healthcare is the unit of the organization that's looking to develop a parcel in Westboro. Oh, we cannot hear you, Christy. Okay, well she's dialing in. I can read the notes. So Mass General Brigham is requesting a letter of support for their proposed project. They're currently going through a process with the state known as a determination of need that's managed by the Department of Public Health, with hearings to begin later this week. The information about the project is attached in our packet, including, and then today we received a draft copy of the letter as well. And so I can open this up to any questions or discussion.
I didn't know if Christy is back on. I didn't want to jump in.
Oh, sure. Christy, if you want to comment.
No, I mean, I think Alan covered it, but, you know, as you saw in the packet, they're preparing to come to the planning board for site plan while they're going through this process. And so this is, you know, a letter of support for the project, understanding that they would still be going through the, you know, the typical permitting processes.
Okay, so in the draft letter that was provided, I did have a conversation with Mr. Hernandez, who's president of Mass General Brigham Integrative Health Care, which is the portion of Mass General Hospital and the network that is doing the facility. The letter highlights sort of the salient points as this relates to Westboro. Probably the most interesting thing I found is that you know, we're not involved in the determination of need. That is, you know, up to the state, and certainly we're not to get involved in that. But that the determination of need is based on their ability to service existing patients. So patients who are already using doctors, practitioners, and other facilities by MGH. Most of those are in Boston, with a couple of small satellite facilities, but it's the hospitals in Boston, and it's Newton Wellesley Hospital is part of their network as well. And so they're looking at Westboro in part because within a 20-minute drive time radius, they have 42,000 patients existing who use Mass General physicians and programs and services. And so the other information is in the packet. I guess I'll open it up to any questions and discussions of the board. Shelby.
Yeah, so I want to thank you, Alan, for having those conversations and for the thorough packet that we were presented, Christy, through your channels in this project. I think that it is, again, I think, Alan, to your point, you know, it's not our decision to determine the need, but I'm certainly in support of this project. I think that the information that's been provided and having personal experience from a business perspective of individuals who live within Westboro or its immediate catchment who have to make the long trek to Boston for, you know, what I consider pretty basic care, follow-up appointments with specialists, an MRI, et cetera. To have that here in Westboro, I think would be a huge enhancement to the health and well-being of not only Westboro residents, but, you know, those in surrounding areas that would use this facility. I think it's, you know, I look forward to opportunity to comment on the site plan as well. It's an opportunity for us to develop a part of the proponent to develop a parcel that has been sitting there for a while. So I see all positives to this, as well as enhancing, you know, certainly the economy here. So I don't want to go on, but I am in support.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions? Sean, and then Ian.
I appreciated the documents today that answered the questions that have been raised by, I think, the town of Marlborough and their members and the competition issues. I think that Brigham came with very clear answers to those, and I feel confident that they'll be able to get this approved based on what they've told us. So So I'm comfortable with this project as well.
Okay, Ian, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I'm gonna go off camera. Hopefully this works, but I too am supportive. I don't want to echo the things that were said before. I guess one other piece, and I know we talked about this prior, was the opportunity in the economy, in our local economy and housing economy for doctors, for the physicians, nurses, hospital staff, high-paying jobs, and those that would reside in our community, and provide, vibrancy and continued support in our community for housing prices and restaurants and all that stuff. So I think it definitely is a win-win, both for patients, but also for the town as well, in terms of employment support, housing prices, et cetera. So very supportive.
Okay, thank you. Patrick?
I would just say I'm very supportive as well. I'm excited for this project. I think it's a great opportunity for the town and the surrounding communities to have a facilities like this within the region. So this is great, and I look forward to learning and hearing more about it as it moves forward.
Okay. And I should have mentioned, I'm sorry, Chris Egan of Cruth Capital is on, in case we had any questions for the current property owner. And it's my understanding that this property, as part of this project, is being sold to Mass General Brigham. So he's here in that capacity. And I do also want to mention that, it is mentioned in the draft letter that, and is previously discussed, Mass General Brigham is talking to the town about a pilot agreement, which is payment in lieu of taxes, given that this is a substantial facility and they are a nonprofit organization, and those discussions and negotiations would continue. Okay. Shelby?
Yeah, and I want to just clarify something I said. Sometimes you say something and then you go, well, I'm not sure that people understood that. When I speak to my professional experience, I don't have anything to gain from this facility being here. What I'm saying is, in the business of caring for elderly folks who have to coordinate rides, and just working with the senior center, who they are always, struggling to get people to Boston for appointments. This represents a huge enhancement for the lives of those individuals. So I just wanted to provide that clarification, so someone didn't say, "Of course she's in support. She benefits from it." No, I don't. Sorry about that.
No worries. Thank you for the clarification. Okay. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Shelby.
If I can come off mute, yeah, I'd be happy to make that motion. I move to approve the proposed letter of support for the Mass General Brigham project.
So moved. In a second. Sean Keogh seconds. Thank you. And any further comment or discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Welch?
Welch, yes.
Marshall?
Marshall, yes.
Keogh?
Yes. Keogh, yes.
Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So the motion's approved, 5-0-0, 5 being present. Thank you very much. And thank you, Chris, for being here just in case. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Selectmen. I appreciate it, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda is the fiscal 2022 budget and ATM warrant update. Oh, Christy, we're not hearing you. You're on mute.
I'm just pulling up my presentation, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Lots of technical difficulties.
I know the feeling.
While I'm pulling it up, this is just a presentation to give the board an update of some of the things that were outstanding when you last had a presentation on January 27th or 28th. Sorry. There it is. Okay. Okay, I'll share my screen. And Leah Talbot's also on here. Once we go through, if there's additional questions. So I'll just go right into the budget updates. These are updates to the budget document related to expenditures. So this is just updates for the different departments. And a lot of these are really based on staff turnover. So you'll see that in economic development, for example, we brought on our new economic development director, and it was the anticipated salary for that position was slightly higher than what we're paying. That's also true in the Board of Health. We also brought on a new person. We made some changes in Historical Commission. You had seen earlier that there was a warrant article on the warrant, and they had said that that was really more of a budget item, and so we increased their budget to include that warrant article amount of the $4,500. In insurance, our medical insurance was finalized. So that was a 0% increase, but based on current year's numbers and the fact that we are still moving kindergarten teachers off of the Kindy account, we increased it by 1%, but we had budgeted 2%, so that's a $113,000 decrease. In fire and EMS, we made adjustments based on the contract negotiated with the police chief. We received our assessment from Assabet, and so that was slightly higher than we anticipated. So overall, in the general fund, there's a decrease of $120,000, $657. We made some changes with the wastewater treatment plant board, and then sewer and water. These are also related to salaries. And so, as you know, we have several DPW positions that are paid out of water and sewer, as well as the general fund. Probably the most interesting that everyone's kind of been waiting for is the more information that we might have on Chapter 70, because we had showed you during our budget presentation that the governor's budget had come out the night before and had increased our Chapter 70 by almost $3 million. Unfortunately, we really don't have any additional information related to that. The House Ways and Means is the next step in that process, and they have not come out with their budget yet. However, we have received some guidance that the next iteration of the budget may use a different calculation for Chapter 70 funding, and that's something that we're paying very close attention to. Right now, the Student Opportunities Act was proposed to be implemented over a 7-year period. Beginning last year, because of COVID, it actually didn't begin in last year, and so it's proposed in the governor's budget to be implemented over 7 years, beginning in FY22. We're hearing that there's pressure on the legislature to actually implement over 6 years, and so the student opportunity amount would actually increase slightly, because you would get sort of 1/6 of the piece of 1/6 of the pie, I guess, of the overall implementation. Another thing that they're looking at doing is holding towns harmless for any decreases in student enrollment between 10/1/19 and 10/1/2020. Westboro actually shows an increase in student enrollment of about 38 students in 10/1/2020. And so I've reached out to the superintendent so that we can, and I've also reached out to one of our representatives to start to discuss that. The reason that we are showing the increase in student enrollment is because we brought on over 200 full-day kindergartners. And so if we're truly being held harmless for any decreases in student enrollment, then we need to be clear assuming that that's the calculation they end up using, we need to be clear about that going forward, so that our true hold harmless amount is really our 10-1-19 number plus the kindergartners that we brought on, because we did implement the full day kindergarten in this fiscal year. And so those are some of the things that we're watching. The reason that our increase is so high is because our foundation budget is such that we received a minimum aid adjustment. And so because our calculation under the old formula would have been better than our calculation under the new formula, we and about 20 other communities received this minimum aid adjustment. If calculations changed based on some of the things I just described, it's possible that our foundation budget would go up and we may not be eligible for the minimum aid adjustment. And so, unfortunately, that's all the information that I have. We're continuing to watch it. We hope the number, remains the same. We're continuing to reach out. And so, that's kind of where we're at. When we look at the fiscal 22 budget, based on the changes that I described earlier, we had a decrease in the percent change. So it was 4.93%, and we've gone down to 4.81% based on the changes I mentioned earlier. And so then the increase in the average single family tax bill has gone from 524, which was presented in January, to 515. That's not taking into account that additional $2.8 million in the governor's numbers, but it is using the $770,000 in free cash as we did in fiscal 21. And then this just shows our reserve summary. So we're looking to use about $2.7 million in free cash. That's to fund the 770, which is to lower the tax rate, and also to fund the capital plan, and then additional money from retained earnings. So it would bring our free cash and stabilization down to about 12.09%, which is within the targeted goal in our comprehensive fiscal management strategy or fiscal management policy. Excess levy capacity would go down as presented. Again, this is if we were to not recognize the governor's number, and so we've really kept it level funded for Chapter 70, based on the fact that we're still waiting, and we want to be clear and conservative about the numbers that we're putting out, understanding that the local aid number that's in the governor's budget, could change. In managing impact, this is something I spoke about in January. We talked about that $770,000 number and whether or not we should continue to use it. So these numbers change slightly from the numbers that I showed you in January, but the average single family increase, if we don't use the $770,000, would be a $610 increase. Excess levy capacity change would be that a negative $1.3 million. If we use no free cash, if we do use the free cash, but we don't recognize the governor's numbers, it's 515 projected, so a decrease in excess levy capacity of the 604. And then with the governor's numbers, we're showing a $354 increase, which is about $100 less than we were estimating last year, and then an increase in excess levy capacity. So in going, in talking about what we would do if we were to recognize the 2.8 million, we did discuss this at the finance team, the town-wide finance team. So that's town and school, as well as the chair of the finance committee. And we talked about using this additional money to completely eliminate our structural deficit of that 770,000. So we would be in a position where going into next year, we wouldn't be using any free cash, and it wouldn't have that sharp impact on the taxpayer. In looking at estimated receipts, these numbers haven't changed based on the numbers that have come in since the second quarter. And so we will have one more chance to look at receipts as they come in the third quarter before we go to town meeting. And so there could be some adjustments. We did see a couple we did see a couple categories increase, and we saw others decrease. And so we're really hopeful that in third quarter we'll be able to start to really project what's going to happen going forward. But as we described in January, it's very difficult to know what's going to happen in fiscal 22 because we're talking about a year that won't start until July 1st of 21. And just sort of watching as the vaccines are rolling out and as the economy is reopening, I think things are looking good, but we certainly want to be conservative about what our revenues are going to be. And that is the end of my budget presentation. So I think we were also going to go through the warrant, but I think I'll stop here if you want to ask questions.
Okay, any questions from members of the board?
No specific questions at this time. Christy, as usual, I presume you'll post this in the budget documents that you normally have the presentations online?
Yep.
Great.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Patrick, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was realizing I was waving and my video wasn't on. Sorry about that. Yeah, just going back to your free cash to lower tax rate slide. It mentions the 354 estimate after the governor's numbers, and then over in the middle column there, you've got estimate with free cash at $515 as the anticipated increase. Is the 354 number both the estimates of governor number and the additional use of the 770,000 of free cash, or is it just one or the other?
No, I'll pull it up again. Oops. No, so you can see at the bottom what the use of free cash would be. So the 354 would be if the governor's number came to fruition, and we would use no free cash to lower the tax rate.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I guess, well, other people might be thinking of questions. I guess the one question I have is there any sense of timing from the delegation at this point as far as House Ways and Means and their budget and the process with the Chapter 70 funding?
So we've been told that they should come out with something by the end of March, which we're fast approaching. And so, we'll continue to have those conversations, but we don't have any guidance at this point. What we've really been trying to pursue is if those the calculations that we described, the differences in the calculation, we've been trying to pursue what our number would look like under those calculations, and Amber has been working with us on that, trying to obtain that number from either her association or DESE, and we haven't been successful at this point to get that number.
Okay, thank you. Ian.
Hey, just real quick, I think I know the answer, but just we'll throw it out. The numbers we have out there do not reflect any potential impacts that may come from federal stimulus. Is that correct?
Right. So good question. So as I sent an email to the board, the town is estimated to get a direct allocation from the American Rescue Plan of $5.6 million. And that's money that could be used through 2024. And the money is going to be given in 2 separate allocations. And we're really still awaiting guidance from the Treasury on exactly how we can use that money. One of the sort of categories that they've put out there that we could use the money for is revenue loss. And so, assuming that means that we could just sort of blanket use it for the revenue loss, and we can look at, 2019 revenues, so pre-pandemic revenues, and then current revenues, and also with an eye towards the economy and see what we expect to come back fully, that would certainly impact that number, that average single family impact. And so as soon as we get that guidance, the finance team will meet and provide recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Sean?
And so potentially then that could be how we wean ourselves off of the free cash by using that money in lieu of, depending on what happens with the Chapter 70 money.
Right. So we wouldn't, yes. Yeah. So yes, we wouldn't want to use probably more money than we would have expected to get in revenue. But that would be a way to certainly reduce the need for the 770.
Okay, Patrick or Shelby? No questions? Patrick, if you're waving, your camera's off. He's okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, and one more question?
Yeah, I mean, more a statement than a question. I mean, my hope or recommendation is once we get guidance is if we're able to use that for revenue, and we know we have a revenue decrease there. I mean, I agree with weaning off that free cash. That's first and foremost, but I would, if we both got what the governor's budget said, plus that could further reduce that even 350. And I'd love to make that increase as small as possible, especially this year. I think would go a long way for the community. Yep. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that would be great if we got both of those and we were able to use it. I think if we can sort of start eliminating that structural deficit, and if we can do it all in 1 year, that's really going to be beneficial to the community. And then if we can use it to further lower that 354 number, then that's what we would likely recommend. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. So on to the annual town meeting warrant update.
Yeah, so I'll pull that up as well. So I just sent out version 6 of the annual town meeting warrant. I can tell you that version 7 is right on its heels, getting ready to come out. We just have a couple updates that I can mention when we go through.
Alan, while Christy's pulling that up, how do you want to handle questions? Do we want to just let Christy get through or ask questions with each article where there are, I don't mean each article, but where there are questions as she goes?
Christy, do you have a preference? I mean, I was thinking we're just talking about what's changed.
Yeah, so I guess what I'd like to hear from the board, there's really nothing significantly different from what we talked about in January. And so I would want to understand if the board would want to request anyone come before you at your next meeting, the first meeting in April, to answer any additional questions. I think that you've all heard from a lot of these departments, but given that we have a couple new board members and we haven't talked about this in a while, if there's anything that anyone that you want to come before us, the next meeting would be the meeting to do that. So I'll just get started. So the first is the town reports of the Advisory Finance Committee. The second article being the budget, which we just went through. Regularly recurring. These are obviously articles that come up every year. So the reserve fund hasn't changed. I'll just speak, I guess, to things that haven't changed because I think you've all seen my initial presentation. The restocking of Sandra Pond. This is something that will change for version 7. There's been a request to increase this to 8,000. You might remember that we actually did not fund it for fiscal 21 due to the pandemic. I know that they're doing fundraising, and so it's possible they won't need the full 8,000. But because because they'll need money for this year and next year, and they sometimes need the money prior to town meeting, they've requested an increase of that to 8,000. Keep going. The nutrient evaluation study, there was a discussion at the budget meeting about engaging the state in some of this. So Jordan has reached out to the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife, has talked to them about the fact that we're doing this report. And so they're very engaged in understanding the report and being a part of that process. There's been no commitment of any money at this point, but that's something that we'll forward a letter to the delegation requesting help on that. One of the articles that was, I think, before this was the police department time owed, and that was for a couple of the officers who were retiring, and it was just vacation time and things that we owed them under the contract. And so we are actually able to fund that through the budget, the police department budget, as was at the level that was presented back in January. And so we're able to pull that off of the warrant. This is all the capital plan. We haven't seen any significant changes here. In version 7, you'll note that J, the high school gymnasium partition replacement, they did receive bids. And so this number has actually gone down to $245,900.
Okay, that was one of my questions, Christy, because I know that was still out to bid and they hadn't cracked those yet. You're going to probably speak to Hastings because that's my next question.
Yeah. So the Hastings School sprinkler, so you'll remember that the total amount anticipated for the project was $1.5 million. And so we had talked about this being a borrow article, which is currently how it is written. So if you'll remember, we had an appropriation in 2019 of $627,000 in surplus, overlay surplus, which was appropriated towards this project. And then we had another vote at a subsequent town meeting to expand the previous borrowing authorization towards this project of $133,000. So the total amount that was authorized for the project was $760,000, and based on estimates that they had received, they thought that it would actually come in at 1.5. They have opened the bids, and with the bids and some contingencies, the total amount of the project is actually $931,650. And so, though this is still written like a borrow, one thing that we've considered is that since now we're only talking about $171,000, to include that in as a free cash article. And so to just add, so that the total amount would just be paid off and we wouldn't impact our debt strategy. And so that's the numbers that I showed you earlier, where I showed that that after town meeting, if everything was approved, we would come within that 12.09% of our goal. That included the 171 in that number. And so this will be rewritten as a free cash article. I'm sorry, as a free cash transfer. I think when I came before you, the Open Space Committee had asked for, I think, $30,000 for appraisals and surveying. And we looked at some of the money that they actually currently have. And so the request was reduced to the $15,000. For the stormwater infrastructure improvements, this is something that was previously around $65,000. The reason that we have increased it is that per the terms of the grant, we need to appropriate the full amount, even though we will be using grant money to offset it. And so that was increased for that reason.
Christy, can I just ask a clarifying question on the Hastings?
Yep.
As I read this, it says we vote to appropriate $931,650, including, or sorry, in addition to the 133. Am I reading that wrong?
No, you're reading it right. Hang on, let me just go back.
I mean, maybe this is in version 7, but.
Yeah, let me just double check right here.
And then, because it does say rescind on the 627.
Well, that's right. And so that part does need to be rewritten based on the use of free cash instead.
Okay, so both the free cash and then both the 133 and the 627 sort of administratively are just.
So the total amount of the project is the 931,650. You're correct that there's a mistake in there, but so the total additional amount needed would be 171,650, and that with the overlay surplus of 627 and the borrow of 133 would bring us to that 931,650.
Wait, I'm sorry. But the total project is 931.
Right, 931,650.
Okay.
So 931,650, and then we already appropriated the 627 in surplus, and that would remain. And then you would also use the 133 in the borrow that is already included in the debt strategy, and that leaves us with a balance due of 171,650, which we would change the article to just be a free cash request for that amount, the 171.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I ran out of fingers to count that on my hands. Thank you.
Sorry about that. We'll fix that in version 7. So let me go back to sharing my screen. Okay. I think that those are really the only changes that we've had since we last met. This needs to go back one more time to council for review, and they'll also review the bylaws, the proposed poultry bylaw. But everything else is the same. So if the board is interested in hearing from anyone coming before you, or if you just want to, there's another thing we need to fix. If we just want to, discuss this further, or if you will be prepared to vote at the next meeting, I mean, we can move forward however you're comfortable, as long as we are ready to close the warrant at your second meeting in April.
Okay, so I'll put it to members of the board. If there are any articles where you'd like to have someone come in to answer any questions or present? Sean?
Question. For any of these articles, would we consider another hearing on them, or would we just discuss them at town meeting, like say the change of name of the select board or the town seal discussion? Do we want to have an open discussion on those with folks, or is that really just we'll have that at town meeting?
Sean, can you kind of clarify what are you suggesting that we have a public hearing on those items, or a discussion among the boards?
Oh, pardon me. Yeah, I would say probably a public hearing. And would that be beneficial, or they sort of are? It's kind of a yes/no decision, I guess. So it's maybe it can just be handled at town meeting.
That was the discussion that we had, that this board had, was that unlike the poultry bylaw, where you're really sort of changing the wording and receiving feedback to change the wording, the town seal article is really to create or not create a committee that would have a larger and public process. And then that is also true with the name change of the board, where the discussion was really, do we do it or not do it? But maybe it's worth putting those on the April agenda to have a little more discussion, since we have the 2 new members.
Shelby?
Yeah, I just, Sean, you may have seen some of the meetings where we discussed this with the prior board on the town seal in particular. But the intent of, if it is a yes vote to create a committee, was that there would be a very extensive public process. And, you know, the article includes, you know, committee, the intent to have a committee comprised of individuals that really would be kind of well-versed in the space that would be required, historicals, history of the town, et cetera, so that was certainly the intent. I mean, I think I could be downplaying the board name change, but I personally feel like we need to have a public hearing for that. I'm comfortable in going to town meeting to say, you know, to have that debate on town meeting floor for discussion.
All right, no, that sounds great. I just sort of wanted to throw it out there to, you know, I wasn't, you know, the poultry bylaw was clear. I guess you're right, because we were talking wording and I mean, we could keep talking about that. But yeah, I just wanted to review those, and that sounds great. And then as long as eventually we do have, I think that especially on the town seal, I know there's some strong thoughts on that. So that's great.
And part of the structure with the committee for town seals, it would be appointed by the moderator. So it's a committee that's being created by town meeting and would report back to town meeting. As town meeting would have, if there was going to be any change to the town seal, it would have to be a town meeting vote to accomplish that as well. And I know there's been some discussion, you know, why we're not having hearings or more public discussion about the name of the select board, because it is changes. In my mind, it's a semantic change. It doesn't change the role, the function, the operation of the board or any aspect of the town. It's simply how we refer to this board. And so it's, you know, it's a find and replace all. It's not changing any rules or bylaws or actions, authority, anything of that nature. So there's not, I don't want to say it's not substantive, because it certainly is substantive in its messaging and its meaning, but it's not changing governance in any way. Whereas obviously the poultry change to the animal control bylaws, a very substantive change in regulation, administration, enforcement, and governance. So, but we can certainly chat about it more at the next meeting if you know, Patrick would like a little time.
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable with this. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm clear on both of those, Alan. I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Alan, I just because you asked the question, I have no questions on any of these. I'd be ready to vote at the next meeting. There's no further presentations that I need on any of those warrant articles.
Okay. Shelby?
Sorry, I meant to ask, and I never did when we saw this earlier, the Disability Commission, Christy, that's 7 members. That would be appointed by whom? It doesn't say, that's why I'm asking.
Oh, we can't hear you, Christy. Unmute the phone.
Let me look at the MGL. There's a lot going on over here.
So I was going to say, maybe it's in the MGL, you know, the chapter that says.
I expected it is, so let me just look at that.
Okay. Well, you can clarify that in an email, and I guess it would be, you know, does MGL, my follow on is, does MGL define who the 7 members have to be, or do we have some room there, and what would your recommendation be?
Okay. All right, I can follow up with those questions. Do you want me to just follow up in an email with the questions?
Yeah, that's
under MGL, it's appointed by selectmen.
Yeah.
Except towns having a town manager form of government, which town's appointment shall be made by the town manager, subject to approval of the selectmen. So it appears, quick reading, it's town manager with concurrence from the Board of Selectmen.
So say that makes perfect sense, written like a good law. There you go.
It is. It goes on and on.
All right, but then I would be interested in the composition, if we could have that for our next meeting, just so we could understand that, because like Ian, I'm ready to move on the warrant, but that one jumped out at me that I didn't feel like we had discussed it.
Yep, that sounds good. Yes, I can have Fred also provide some information, because he worked very closely with this commission in Lexington and had recommended this. So,
Christy, just one question. You and I know, talked last week a little bit about this, about the opportunity of possibly putting some more information on the town warrant in regards to the individual articles and their potential estimated cost to the taxpayer on an article by article basis. You had mentioned that it's something that has been previously discussed by, I think, the AFC and the finance team. Is there any, and the window hadn't been shut, so to speak, on possibly doing that. So I'm just curious, is there any ability to look into that more between now and town meeting?
So it wasn't discussed by the finance committee. It was discussed by the finance team. And so as I had told you, we would have a finance team meeting in April, and we could have that discussion. So that's before the warrant closes. And we can, we can have that discussion, and we can talk about sort of the reasons that we hadn't done it previously, and how we might frame it if we were to do it.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, second to last item on the agenda is approval of the January 28th, 21 minutes.
I'll move their acceptance.
So moved. In a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll move forward to a roll call vote. Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
Marshall?
Marshall, yes.
Welch?
Welch, yes.
Keogh?
Keogh, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. The minutes are approved. Vote 500, 5 being present. And on to our last item, which is issues and correspondence of the Selectmen. I'm just going to sort of go and reverse screen order here. So, Ian.
Yeah, thank you. Just one quick thing related to what we talked about earlier around the kind of reopening of Town Hall fully, that perhaps on a future agenda we should talk about with the stage 4, which is section 1, the return of our meetings in person and what that may mean, and whether we want to do that. Do we have kind of approvals that we think we could make that work? And how that would happen. So throw it out to the board and to the chair as to whether that's a discussion worth having. I think it is. We should start planning for it. Probably more because for some reason my wireless isn't working tonight.
Just to follow up really quickly, that we did receive an email from the school committee that they're looking at going back in person, and their first meeting in April. And they have reached out to the Board of Health and some other communities that have been meeting in person for guidance. So I think that's timely.
Okay. Yeah, and I agree. And Chris and I had talked about even possibly putting on tonight's agenda. The challenge is that even though the press release put us into phase 4, stage 1, the guidance and the update to sector-specific rules haven't been updated. So, at this point, yes, offices might be at 50% capacity, but they've not rescinded the executive order from December limiting meetings inside to 10 people. And so until there's clarification, we'll look to see, hopefully within the next week or so, they'll catch up with the executive orders and clean up and get a little more consistency and give us some specific direction on that. Okay, nothing else, Ian?
Nope, nothing further.
Okay, Shelby.
Yep, thank you. Just a couple items. We'll try to keep it quick here. Just wanted to give the board a quick update on the Westboro Village HOA water situation. So I'm serving as the liaison to that, I guess, matter, if you will. Received an update from our DPW director and Christy, and that is that so things are progressing in a positive direction, if you will. So the HOA and property manager are in the process of selecting a vendor to assist them in maintenance of the system. Today, thanks to snow melts, there was a second connection found, if you know where Gleason Street is, and that connection is actually on the Westboro Village property, and it was closed. So it was found, and by opening that actually creates an additional loop from the town main. So if you would imagine better water flow and circulation. Josh Van Houten, certainly, and Chris, but as our operations manager, continues to do a great job of staying in close contact and receiving emails if there are, kind of what I'll call little blips, and addressing those and really trying to pinpoint what was the situation. If this person was experiencing some brown water, have they been home since the last flush? I mean, really trying to pinpoint what the issue might be for that particular individual. So, and Josh is actually working on helping with to prepare what am I trying to say?
Flushing.
Flushing plan. Thank you. Flushing plan. To assist the service vendor and just make sure that they understand kind of what our recommendations would be, with the understanding that service vendor would most likely come with their own recommendations. So that's headed on the right track, and want to thank DPW for all their work working with the community. Also wanted to just update folks that I am the appointee to the Hockomock Pond Reuse Committee. We had our first meeting, really productive, with a site visit on March 29th, which is next Monday. We're actually walking the property to understand things, and then our work will continue. And then just finally, I just want to remind the public just to, things are starting to open. It feels good. Sun's here, spring's here. Vaccines are coming. They're still hard to find, but please wear your mask and maintain social distance. Even, if you're walking on a trail or you're seeing someone, just be kind and put your mask on, and then, if they're gone by, take it off and enjoy the fresh air, but please be respectful. We're not out of the woods yet. So thank you. Is it my job to thank Westboro TV? Lee used to do it, so. Okay, thank you, Westboro TV. Thank you, Westboro TV.
Okay, great. Thank you, Shelby. Patrick.
Sorry, just coming off of mute. So, yeah, first I want to thank Christy and the team for working on the reopening and return to work plan. No doubt there's been a lot of moving parts, and I appreciate the hard work. I'd like to just first disclose again to the public that my wife, Julia, works for the Town Youth and Family Services Office and has so for the past 5 years. The return to work strategy is a timely issue, and I'm concerned that we might be returning back in the midst of a pandemic, even though we appear to be on our way to full vaccination and herd immunity. I'll further say that while the Board of Health data is headed in the right direction, what was 99 new cases in January 8th's report is now 56 as of March 19th, and that this is good news, and I believe it's because our community has stepped up and for the most part embraced the CDC and state precautions. However, the current state COVID risk map still has Westboro as yellow, and nearby Franklin and Middlesex counties are on the rise per the state's March 16th report. And as of today, several bordering towns' offices are still reduced appointment only or not allowing public in at all. Additionally, Dr. Fauci just this past Saturday stated, "I start to get worried on how to interpret the data out of places like Massachusetts and Michigan, where we are seeing some growth." He went on to say pulling back on mitigations is risky, which is the reason why we should not declare victory prematurely. Other U.S. health officials have stated also that the highly contagious and likely more deadly variant first identified in the UK, called B18117, has been detected in over 50 jurisdictions in US and is likely to account for up to 30% of the COVID-19 infections in the United States and could become the dominant strain in the US by the end of this month or in early April. Understanding that you and the team are working on a near-term plan, I simply ask if a change to the status quo is needed. What has happened specific to Westboro that requires a change, as only 25% of the state is currently vaccinated, and that if there is a need for change to the status quo, that is weighed against the risk outlined considering the sacrifices we've all made, and that we are so close to coming out of this in the end. And then just one last note, I did notice that on some of the town's COVID documentation up on the town site, some of it might be a bit out of date, and I'd like to ask if someone can take a look at that and see if there's a need to assess that data and update it as appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Sean?
Say something? Can I just say something?
Oh, sure, if you'd like.
I just want to be very clear that 2 weeks ago, we told department heads to start talking to their staff about coming back at 100% with a possible date of April 5th, but that was not a set in stone date, with the understanding that we would be looking at the guidance as it came out, considering that yesterday we went to step 1 of phase 4. I also just want to add that while towns around us may be doing different things, some of the different things are being fully open and fully back 100%. And a lot of that is related to town's ability to space out within the offices. So I do think that, I understand Patrick's comments and certainly any concerns about this. We take this pandemic very seriously, but we are continuing to watch the data, and we have not put a hard date on full return.
Thank you, Christy.
Okay, thank you. Sean?
Hey, thank you. Just a quick question, and I bring it up here, maybe it's a future discussion item. For the, I'm going to say it wrong, the Hakamana Pond Reuse Committee, at some point, would it make sense, I see you've got a pretty comprehensive list of departments represented there. Would it make sense to include abutters or a couple of concerned citizens to that committee? And am I just making it an item for a future meeting?
Yeah, and I don't think I can comment.
If you want a quick comment?
Well, a couple things, Sean. So I would say that members of the public are always welcome to join in or to submit comments. I should have said I'm chair of the committee. Jordan McCarron is the vice chair. So we welcome comments and involvement. We have, at our first meeting, we talked about Atlantic Management and Amazon being in a butter on the, whatever that north side or west side, whatever that side is, the other side. And that we would certainly want to understand kind of the connectivity of trail systems and access. And I know that that was part of the site plan that was process that the planning board undertook. So absolutely, I think that those individuals are welcome. I'm more than happy to at least meet people, or Jordan is, I'm sure, to get their names and involve them. And if nothing else, make sure they're getting the minutes and that they're able to follow it. But in terms of expanding the committee, and that would be ultimately a vote of the select board, selectmen here. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. I'm not sure if, I guess, as a board, we'd have to decide, kind of, if you will, why. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. And I was considering possibly somebody from Westboro Village was really my thought, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think the more public involvement and even just if people are aware that it's going on, so if you have specific context and making them aware that we are meeting, then that's a step in the right direction. And I'm happy to explain to them what we're doing at this point. I mean, again, even the site walkthrough it's a public meeting and it's posted. So if someone really wanted to attend, they absolutely could with a mask.
Yes, thank you. That sounds good.
I can add it to the agenda for your discussion. so you can have the discussion.
Okay. Is this something, just looking at what's potentially on the agenda for April in preparation for town meeting, is this something that we might, that's time sensitive to do at the next, one of the next two meetings, or is this something, Sean, you'd be okay with us holding off until we wrap up our prep for town meeting?
Yeah, I think that'd be fine, and I can give, a couple people out there a heads up that, hey, there's a walkthrough on the 29th that you might be interested in attending. So.
Okay, great. Patrick, you had a quick comment? And then...
Yeah, I just had a quick question for Shelby or for the board or perhaps Christy in regards to, is that something that we as the board can also participate in that walkthrough? I'd just be really curious. That's a really interesting piece of property, and there's a lot that potentially is going on with it. Just curious if we can attend that as well.
So I think it's, oh, go ahead, sorry, Christy.
You can attend. It's a site visit, so as long as there's no deliberation and it's just observing the site, you could attend.
Thank you.
Okay. I've got one item as an update. As the board and the public knows, I'm a trustee with the Westboro Affordable Housing Trust. At our March meeting, we voted to, well, first let me step back and say there are a number of projects that have been brought to us that we're meeting with. There's a parcel of town property we're looking at as a potential for some affordable housing. We were also contacted by the Westboro Housing Authority to initiate discussions on exploring the potential for property the Housing Authority currently owns but is undeveloped, and an exploration of what type of housing could potentially be there in the structure of a project and what the trust's involvement might be in that. And so there's already activity moving forward. Dealing with the more immediate concerns around COVID-19, over 80 communities in the Commonwealth have set up emergency rental assistance programs for those with housing insecurity due to COVID-19. That issue has been the number one issue being tackled by our Westboro COVID-19 Community Fund as well. So at the March 11th meeting, the Affordable Housing Trust did vote to create a COVID-19 emergency rental assistance program. We are following best practice guidelines from the Massachusetts Housing Partnership in doing so, and the trust has committed some of its own funds as well as offering matching funds for funds that might be raised and contributed by the COVID-19 Community Fund or other private donors. Where we are in the process right now is we have a definition of an outline of the program. We have put out an RFQ and received responses that we will be reviewing and making a selection at an additional meeting this coming Thursday morning for an administrator for the program. We'll be contracting with a nonprofit with experience in running affordable housing programs, lotteries, wait lists, and selection and case management. These nonprofits are working with other communities on the same type of program and moving forward. Our goal is that we would be able to begin accepting applications in a window in April, with, if need be, conducting a necessary lottery based on the number of applications versus available funds, and be able to start actually providing rent relief for rents due May 1st, which is a pretty aggressive time forward, but we think we can make it happen. We'll be reaching out as we move forward and get the program up and running. We'll be reaching out to town departments, nonprofits, social service agencies, houses of worship, to help reach people in town, residents of Westboro who might be eligible for the program, and solicit their applications and get them into the process in moving forward. It is a comprehensive program defined that does include things like translation services and phone assistance for people who might not have a computer or easy access to one or might need help doing it. One of the suggestions we received is a drive-in event where volunteers with computers stand next to a car in a mask and type the form for the people, photocopy their documentation, and gather it all up so they can be included in the program as applicants and have their applications reviewed. And so that is moving forward. Based on the funds allocated, we expect that will assist somewhere between 25 and 50 families. It all depends on the number who apply and, you know, the size of their apartments and things of that nature. There are a number of variables in there. And so we are moving forward with that.
It's great news, Alan.
Okay. And that is all I have. So that concludes, I think I got everyone. So that includes issues and correspondence. So Ian, you're frozen right now because I know you're the one who wants to make the motion to adjourn. But I'll take a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Sean. Marshall, second. Any discussion or debate? Hearing none. Marshall.
Yes.
Welch.
Welch, yes.
Keough.
Keough, yes.
Edinburgh, yes. Johnson. No. Johnson. Bueller.
It's not the best look either.
No, he's a little blurry. Okay, that said, the vote is 4-0.
Oh, wait, 1 second. Here he comes.
He's joined back in. Ian, do you vote yes for adjournment?
Johnson, yes.
Excellent. The vote is 5-0-0, 5 being present. Thank you very much. Thank you, Westboro TV. Everyone have a good evening.